It was a typical Thursday night at the Sapphire, a high-end restaurant nestled in the heart of Manhattan, where the city's elite came to enjoy gourmet meals in an atmosphere as lavish as their wallets. The polished marble floors reflected the dim golden light, and the chatter of polished voices mixed with the soft clinking of fine china. As a waiter, Alex had become accustomed to the extravagant personalities and often absurd demands of the clientele. But tonight felt different. Alex had been on his feet for hours, trying to keep up with the demands of his tables. His back ached, his feet screamed in pain, and his patience was wearing thin. This job was draining. Every night, he felt like he was just getting by, doing the same thing over and over, with no clear path forward. His dreams of making it in tech, his real passion, seemed like a distant fantasy. His girlfriend, Maria, often encouraged him to quit, to go after something bigger, but Alex didn't feel like he was good enough. Tonight, however, was different. Alex glanced over at the entrance, where a tall, slender figure walked in. He didn't recognize him at first, but there was something about the man's presence. He wasn't wearing a flashy suit or any sort of obvious sign that he was important. In fact, he looked ordinary. He had on a simple dark jacket, a black t-shirt, and jeans. Nothing too out of the ordinary for a tech guy or a wealthy businessman trying to blend in. But there was something about him that stood out, an aura of quiet confidence, a sense that he didn't need to shout to be noticed. It was only when Alex took the man's drink order that he realized just who he was. Alex had been so wrapped up in the monotony of his shift that he didn't recognize him at first. But then the name came back to him, Elon Musk. He remembered seeing him on the news and social media, headlines about his companies, rockets, and electric cars. Alex couldn't believe it. Of all the nights, of all the customers, this was the one person he never expected to serve. As he walked away from the table, Alex felt a surge of frustration. The job was never-ending, and he was tired of being stuck. He looked at the rich, polished customers and thought about his own life. It felt like a cruel joke. His dreams of working in tech, real, life-changing work, seemed hopeless when all he had was this restaurant job. And now, here he was, serving one of the world's most famous entrepreneurs. It was then, as he passed by the table again, that the words slipped out before he could stop them. Honestly, I don't know why anyone takes him seriously. I mean, Mars? Electric cars? What's next? Building a city on the moon? Alex muttered under his breath. He didn't think anyone was listening. He was just venting. After all, who would take the opinion of a tired, lowly waiter seriously? But as he turned to walk away, he noticed the man at the table, Elon Musk, hadn't even looked up. He simply took a sip of his drink, his face unreadable. Alex couldn't tell if he'd heard him, or if he had just been ignoring him. The comment wasn't meant to be a personal attack. Alex wasn't the type to confront customers directly. He was just frustrated, and it had come out in a moment of irritation. As he moved on to the next table, he felt a slight sense of relief. He was too busy to dwell on the comment, too busy to worry about the impact it might have had. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was a strange tension in the air, something that gnawed at him but was just out of reach. Alex was used to the game of serving the wealthy, pretending to be part of their world, but this time, he couldn't quite shake the feeling that he had crossed some invisible line. It wasn't until later that night, when the dinner rush had finally slowed and the restaurant was quieter, that Alex's worst fears came to life. The manager, Richard, called him over with an urgency in his voice that Alex hadn't heard before. Richard was always calm, always in control, but tonight he looked almost nervous. "Alex," Richard said, his tone serious. "Come here for a second. We need to talk." Alex's heart dropped. He thought he had messed up. Maybe he had been too slow with a drink order, or maybe there was a complaint about his service. But Richard's face gave away nothing. The only thing that seemed off was the uneasy look in his eyes. "I need you to stay calm, okay?" Richard began, his voice low. "Do you know who that guy at table 7 was?" Alex blinked. "The guy in the black jacket? I mean, he looked familiar, but I didn't." "That's Elon Musk," Richard interrupted him. Alex felt his stomach twist. "Wait, what?" "Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, the guy who runs literally everything. Richard said. He owns this place. Alex's blood went cold. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. The man he had just insulted, the one he'd mocked under his breath, was Elon Musk. He had no idea. He had just made a comment, harmless in his mind, that could have cost him everything. Richard let out a sigh, but he wasn't angry. He was just concerned. Listen, I'm not going to fire you, but you need to know something. Elon comes here a lot. He likes to stay low-key, blend in. He doesn't want anyone to know who he is, but the last thing we want is someone making him feel uncomfortable or disrespecting him. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to process the information. I insulted Elon Musk, he thought. I just insulted the man who owns this place. I could lose my job. I could lose everything. I'll be careful, Alex said quietly. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Richard gave him a hard look. Just don't let it happen again. You never know who's sitting in your section. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Alex couldn't focus on his work, his mind constantly replaying the moment he had made that careless comment. What if Elon had heard him? What if he was angry? What if this was the end of his career, the end of any chance he had at climbing out of the hole he felt stuck in? The words hung heavy in his mind. Elon Musk owns this place. Alex had no idea what the next day would bring, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had just changed in a way he couldn't yet comprehend. What had he done? As he walked out of the restaurant that night, Alex looked up at the skyline of Manhattan. The lights sparkled, and for the first time in a long time, he wondered if this was the start of something new. A new opportunity. A new beginning. Would he get a second chance? Alex had always been the kind of person who wanted more. Not just more in terms of material wealth, though that was part of it. He wanted more in the sense of purpose, achievement, and a life that felt like it mattered. But for as long as he could remember, he'd been stuck in a cycle that seemed too familiar to break. And it wasn't for a lack of trying. Born and raised in a small town in upstate New York, Alex never felt that his future was tied to his surroundings. His family didn't have much, but they had enough to get by. His parents worked hard, his dad in construction and his mom as a nurse. They didn't talk much about their dreams. They were too busy making ends meet. But Alex could sense that both of them had unspoken hopes for something better, something bigger than the life they were leading. From a young age, Alex knew that the world was bigger than his little town. He was good with computers, with technology, and while his classmates were busy with sports or parties, Alex spent his time reading up on the latest innovations, from Silicon Valley to the tech hubs of the world. He didn't just dream of a better life. He was actively creating the blueprint for it in his mind. He saw the success stories of tech giants, the ones who'd built empires from nothing, and he believed that, with enough work, he could be one of them. But that was before reality set in. After high school, Alex didn't have the resources to attend a prestigious university, and the small local community college was all he could afford. He didn't mind. He was willing to make it work, determined to find a way to break through the glass ceiling that hung above him. He majored in computer science, hoping it would be his ticket to a better life. But the dream was always clouded by the harsh reality of his situation. He couldn't afford fancy internships, networking events, or even the right technology to work on cutting-edge projects. Most days, he could barely keep up with the coursework, let alone build the impressive portfolio he dreamed of. He graduated with a degree, but without much to show for it except a piece of paper and a ton of student debt. He applied to job after job, but all he heard were rejection letters. The few interviews he managed to land either ended in awkward silence or the dreaded, "You just don't have enough experience." Eventually, Alex gave up on the idea of working in tech. He wasn't willing to go back to school for another degree he couldn't afford, and he wasn't getting any closer to his dream. So, he made peace with it, or at least tried to. That's when he found himself working at the Sapphire. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a steady paycheck. The tips were decent, and honestly, it wasn't the worst job he could have had. But as the weeks went by, it became clear to him that he had fallen into a routine he couldn't break. The days blended together. He woke up, went to work, came home tired, and did it all over again. The endless cycle was draining him. He hated it, but he didn't know what else to do. Then there was Maria. Maria was everything Alex had ever dreamed of. Ambitious, smart, and someone who saw potential in him that he sometimes struggled to see in himself. They met at a party thrown by a friend of a friend, and instantly, they hit it off. She was different from anyone he had ever known. Confident, driven, and unafraid to chase her goals. She was studying marketing at a nearby university, always talking about her future and how she was going to make a name for herself in the business world. Alex admired her. He admired her drive, her ambition, and the way she refused to let anything hold her back. But he also felt small next to her. While she was out there networking and building her career, Alex was stuck serving tables, stuck in a dead-end job that seemed to go nowhere. Maria had big plans, and sometimes, when she talked about her aspirations, Alex couldn't help but feel like he was living in the shadow of her dreams. They were a couple, sure, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she deserved someone better, someone who was on her level. Despite his insecurities, Maria believed in him. She always pushed him to chase his own dreams, to find a way out of the rut he had gotten himself into. She had never liked the idea of him working at the Sapphire. She thought Alex had potential to do so much more. But no matter how hard she tried to convince him to look for something better, Alex was stuck. Maria often talked about moving to the West Coast, to California, where tech companies were booming. She talked about the startup culture, the innovation, the possibility of starting something from scratch. She encouraged Alex to apply for jobs out there, to take risks, to make things happen. But every time she brought it up, Alex felt a deep sense of fear. What if he wasn't good enough? What if he failed? So he stayed in New York, in his comfort zone. He stayed with Maria, who supported him even when he didn't feel like he deserved it. He stayed at the Sapphire, telling himself that one day things would magically change. But deep down, he was losing hope. Every time he served another glass of champagne to a wealthy businessman or wiped down another table, he wondered if this would be his life forever. Would he ever be able to break free? It was a conversation that had been lingering between him and Maria for months. She was tired of seeing him stuck in a job that drained his soul. "Alex, you have to make a change," she would say, over dinner or late at night when they were lying in bed. "You're smarter than this. You have the talent. You just need to take a leap of faith." But the leap seemed too big, too impossible. Maria couldn't understand why Alex didn't take her advice to heart. She didn't know how hard it was to believe in himself when everything around him seemed to be falling apart. Despite everything, Alex had always believed in the idea that things could be different. That one day, he could make it. He just needed the right opportunity. He needed something to change, something that would finally pull him out of this rut. And then, that night at the Sapphire, everything changed. The universe had a strange way of testing people, Alex had come to realize. And sometimes it was through the most unexpected encounters. The moment he insulted Elon Musk without even knowing who he was, Alex set in motion a chain of events that could alter the course of his life in ways he couldn't even begin to fathom. He had no idea how much his world was about to shift, but deep down, something told him that this encounter, this mistake, might just be the very thing that could help him break free. As Alex left the restaurant that night, his mind was racing. And for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to wonder, what if this was the moment everything changed? What if, just maybe, this was the chance he had been waiting for? Maybe, just maybe, his future wasn't as impossible as he'd always thought. The next morning, Alex woke up to the same familiar sound of his alarm blaring from his phone, the harsh jolt of reality forcing him to leave the comfort of his bed. His thoughts were still swirling from the night before, replaying every single detail. He had no idea what to expect after his encounter with Elon Musk. Should he apologize? Should he pretend like nothing happened? Would he even see him again? The questions buzzed in his mind, refusing to settle. He pulled himself out of bed, grabbing his phone and scrolling through his messages. Maria had sent him a text that morning. "Are you okay? I've been thinking about you. Do you want to talk later?" Alex hadn't responded. He didn't know what to say to her. The truth was, he was ashamed. He'd made a fool of himself, and what's worse, he had no idea if he had ruined his chances with a powerful person, someone who could help him break free from this dead-end life. What if Elon Musk had taken offense? What if the comment had been the one thing that destroyed his future? The day dragged on like any other. He made his way through the motions of work at the Sapphire, but the weight of his actions hung over him. Every step felt heavier, every glass of wine poured, and every table cleared seemed more like a reminder of the futility of his current existence. The hours blurred together until, finally, the dinner rush began. As he arrived at the restaurant that evening, Alex spotted Richard, the manager, standing near the entrance, talking with someone. It was a face he didn't recognize, but there was something about the conversation that caught his attention. Alex didn't think too much of it at first, brushing it off as just another manager interaction. However, as the night wore on, things started to feel off. Richard kept glancing at him, and every time Alex caught his eye, he noticed the manager's demeanor shift. It was subtle, but there was a new level of seriousness in his gaze, as if he was waiting for something. Alex tried to focus on his tasks, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. Then, around 9 p.m., a group of high-profile guests walked into the restaurant. Alex's heart sank when he saw one of the figures who was walking at the front of the group. It was Elon Musk, along with several colleagues. They were escorted to a private booth near the back of the restaurant, a place reserved for VIPs. Alex froze. The last thing he wanted was to make eye contact with him again. But the universe had other plans. As he moved to bring a drink order to another table, he caught a glimpse of Elon, seated with his colleagues, looking through the menu, relaxed and calm. Alex felt the sudden pressure of being under the microscope. Was he going to say something? Was he going to confront Alex about the comment he'd made? The thought of Elon Musk turning to him, calling him out in front of the entire restaurant, made Alex's palms sweat. His stomach turned in knots. Every time he passed by the table, he tried his best to avoid eye contact, but he couldn't help noticing how calm Elon seemed. However, that calmness didn't last long. As the night unfolded, Alex's shift became increasingly awkward. Every time he came near the table where Elon and his group were seated, Alex felt a strange tension in the air, as if the billionaire was watching him, analyzing him. It was maddening. Alex had no idea what was going through Musk's mind, but the weight of his mistake hung like a dark cloud, hovering over every exchange. Around 11 p.m., when the last few customers were finishing their meals and the restaurant was slowing down, Alex was called over by Richard. His stomach dropped, fearing the worst. What was coming next? "Alex," Richard said, his voice low and serious. "Elon Musk wants to speak with you. Come with me." Alex's heart raced. He couldn't breathe. Was this it? Was he about to be fired on the spot for insulting one of the most influential figures in the world? His mind raced with the possible outcomes, but the truth was, he had no idea what Elon Musk wanted. As he walked over to the back room where Richard was leading him, his nerves were fraying. The weight of what could happen next was overwhelming. Richard stopped at a door, knocked once, and then opened it slightly. "Go ahead," Richard said. "He's expecting you." Alex stepped inside, his legs shaky. Sitting at a small table, looking as relaxed as ever, was Elon Musk. He was sipping a drink, his casual demeanor completely at odds with the storm Alex was feeling inside. The atmosphere was oddly calm, almost like a strange moment in time, where everything seemed suspended. "Mr. Musk," Alex stammered, trying to control his nerves. "I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for what I said last night. It was completely out of line, and I didn't mean to disrespect you in any way." Elon waved his hand, cutting him off. "No need to apologize," he said, his voice calm and composed. "Honestly, I didn't take offense." Alex blinked, confused. "Wait, you didn't?" Elon smiled. "No, not really. To be honest, I've heard worse." He chuckled lightly, and Alex's shoulders relaxed, though he still felt like he was on edge. "But I'll tell you something," Elon continued, leaning back in his chair. "You have to understand one thing about this world. People are always going to have opinions. Some will criticize, some will praise, but in the end, it's what you do with those opinions that matter. What you make of them." Alex wasn't sure how to respond. What do you mean?" Elon paused, taking a sip of his drink. "You've got potential, Alex. I can tell. The only problem is, you don't seem to believe in yourself. You're stuck in a cycle, a loop, and you're not taking the risks you need to take to break out of it." Alex stood frozen. This was not what he expected. He thought he was about to be fired, humiliated, or worse. Instead, Elon was encouraging him, challenging him. "You're wasting time here," Elon continued, his gaze steady. "You could do more than just serve tables. If you really want something, you need to go after it. But you won't get there by sitting around waiting for opportunities to fall into your lap." The words struck Alex hard. It was like a light bulb went off in his mind. Here he was, standing in front of one of the most powerful people in the world, and instead of firing him, he was being given advice. Alex realized, in that moment, that the encounter wasn't a mistake. It was a wake-up call. Elon leaned forward slightly. "I'm not saying this to be harsh, but you need to stop being afraid of failure. If you want to build something great, you've got to be willing to risk everything for it. You don't get anywhere by playing it safe." Alex could hardly believe what he was hearing. Was this really happening? I don't know if I'm ready for something like that," Alex muttered, unsure of what to say next. "You don't have to be ready," Elon said with a half-smile. "You just have to start. And trust me, things have a funny way of working out when you take that first step." With that, the conversation ended. Elon stood, extended his hand, and shook Alex's firmly. "Good luck, Alex," he said, before walking out of the room, leaving Alex standing there, still in shock. Alex left the back room, his mind whirling. Had Elon Musk just given him the greatest advice of his life? He couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was the catalyst for something huge. Was he ready to finally take that first step? The ripple effect had just begun. The days following his encounter with Elon Musk seemed surreal. Alex replayed the conversation over and over in his head, as if trying to understand every word, every glance, every piece of advice Elon had given him. The more he thought about it, the clearer the truth became. The chance he had been waiting for had arrived. But was he ready? It was strange. Alex had spent so many years doubting himself, believing that his lack of resources or experience would always hold him back. Yet, in that brief exchange with Elon, he had felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. And more importantly, the realization that he could do something different. He didn't have to be stuck forever. Still, doubt lingered. He knew that changing his life wouldn't be easy. He couldn't just drop everything and follow his dreams. He had bills to pay, a job he was dependent on, and a relationship with Maria that seemed to be growing more distant by the day. The idea of leaping into the unknown terrified him, even if part of him longed to do exactly that. But then, as if the universe was reading his mind, the opportunity came knocking when he least expected it. A few days after the conversation with Elon, Alex received an email that would change everything. It was from a startup incubator he'd applied to months ago. A long shot, really, something he hadn't thought about since he hit send on the application. The subject line read, "Congratulations, Alex. You've been selected for an interview." His heart skipped a beat. Could this really be happening? Was it possible that his chance was finally here? The email contained a link to schedule a video interview. The startup, Tech Horizon, was a company focused on developing software that aimed to revolutionize the way businesses manage their resources. It was based in California, the land of Silicon Valley, where dreams were made, or shattered, every single day. Alex stared at the screen for a long time, unsure of what to do next. His mind was racing. Should he take the interview? Could he even go through with it? He had nothing to lose, but everything to gain. If he managed to impress them, maybe he could finally escape his life at the Sapphire, leave the comfort zone he had been hiding in, and take that leap Elon had urged him to take. But then, of course, there was the harsh reality. What if he wasn't good enough? What if the rejection was just another failure to add to his list? But what would happen if he didn't try? Alex closed his eyes for a moment, trying to quiet the storm of thoughts inside his head. Then, with a deep breath, he clicked the link and scheduled the interview for the following week. Over the next few days, Alex threw himself into preparing. He brushed up on the startup's mission, learned as much as he could about the software they developed, and practiced answering common interview questions. There was no room for self-doubt this time. He had to be confident, or at least convince himself that he was. This was his chance to prove to himself, and to everyone else, that he could do something more with his life. Maria noticed the change in him. When they met for dinner that evening, she couldn't help but ask about his newfound energy. "You've been different lately, Alex. I've never seen you so focused," she said with a curious smile. Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to explain the storm of thoughts that had consumed him. Finally, he let the words spill out. "I've got an interview," he said simply. Maria raised an eyebrow. "An interview for what?" "A startup in California," Alex replied, feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves flood his chest. "They're offering a position that could, well, it could change everything. This could be my chance to do something big, something I've been dreaming of for years." Maria's eyes lit up, but there was also a flicker of uncertainty. "That sounds amazing, Alex. But California? That's a huge move. Are you really ready for that?" He met her gaze and took a deep breath. "I don't know, but I can't keep living like this. I've got to try." She smiled, but Alex could sense the hesitation in her eyes. Maria had always been the ambitious one in their relationship, the one who had no doubts about her future, the one who could go after what she wanted with an unwavering determination. It wasn't that she didn't support him. It was that Alex could tell she was afraid for him, afraid that he might fall flat, that he might lose everything in pursuit of something that was just out of reach. "You'll do great," Maria said after a beat, her voice soft but filled with encouragement. "But just make sure you're making the right choice for yourself, not for anyone else. You have to want this for you, Alex." Her words stung more than he expected. It wasn't the first time Maria had challenged him to consider his own desires, to look inward and see what truly mattered to him. It wasn't about proving something to her, or anyone else. This was his shot, his decision. The night before the interview, Alex couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying every detail of the job description, every word he'd rehearsed, every fear that lingered. What if he froze up? What if they didn't see potential in him? The next morning, he woke up to a cold rush of panic. The interview was in just 2 hours, and he was still second-guessing himself. His entire life was about to change, and he wasn't sure if he was ready. At least he could look the part. He dressed carefully, his shirt pressed, hair styled, trying to project the confident version of himself he knew he had to be, even if it didn't feel natural. He stared at his reflection in the mirror for a long moment, trying to steady his breathing. This was it. This was the leap. The video call started promptly, and there, in front of him, appeared 2 members of the startup's recruitment team. They were both sharp-looking and professional, wearing casual attire but with an air of authority that immediately put Alex on edge. The interview began with standard introductions, but it didn't take long before the real questions started. "So, Alex," the first interviewer began, her voice steady and serious, "why do you want to work with us at Tech Horizon?" Alex took a deep breath and launched into his prepared answer, but something shifted in him. As he spoke, he felt his confidence grow. The words felt real, not rehearsed. The nervousness started to fade. This was what he had been waiting for, this moment where everything finally made sense. He told them about his love for technology, his dreams of being part of something bigger than himself, and how he wanted to challenge the status quo. He shared his past struggles and how they had shaped him into someone ready for a challenge. When the interview ended, the recruiters seemed impressed. They told him they'd be in touch soon, but Alex left the call feeling strangely calm. He had done everything he could. It was out of his hands now. That night, as Alex lay in bed, he thought about the next step. He didn't know whether he had gotten the job yet, but he knew one thing for certain. No matter the outcome, this interview had been the first step towards something new. It was proof that he was capable of so much more than he'd ever realized. And for the first time in a long while, Alex felt like he was finally moving toward the future he had always dreamed of. The journey had begun. The days that followed the interview felt like an eternity. Each moment seemed to drag, as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting to see what Alex would do next. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart would leap in his chest, only to fall back down in disappointment when he saw it wasn't the email he was waiting for. Each hour that passed brought him closer to the edge of uncertainty. He'd given everything to that interview, but now he had to wait, and waiting felt like torture. Maria noticed his restlessness, but she didn't say much. She had been supportive, but there was a quiet distance growing between them. Maybe it was the pressure of their relationship, Or maybe it was the fact that Alex was standing at the edge of a cliff, preparing to leap into an entirely new life. Whatever it was, he could feel it. One evening, as Alex sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone, Maria broke the silence. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but tinged with concern. Alex glanced up at her, trying to force a smile. "Yeah, just waiting for an email." She raised an eyebrow. "I've never seen you so anxious. I don't think I've ever seen you this serious about something." He shrugged, looking down at his phone again. "I don't know what I'm doing, Maria. This job, this move, it's all so huge. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something, but I can't see the bottom. I don't even know if I'm ready." Maria sat down across from him, her eyes softening. "I get it, but you can't let fear hold you back. You've got something great in you, Alex. You always have." Alex met her gaze, but the words didn't feel as reassuring as they used to. She had always been the one with the confidence, the one who never doubted her path. But Alex? He was used to second-guessing himself, questioning whether he was truly capable of the dreams he held. "I don't know if I can do this, Maria," he said quietly, feeling the weight of his uncertainty settle in his chest. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed once more, breaking the tension between them. He glanced at the screen, his breath catching in his throat. It was from Tech Horizon. His hands trembled as he opened the email, his mind racing. The world seemed to stop for a moment as he read the subject line. "Congratulations, Alex. We'd like to offer you a position at Tech Horizon." For a long moment, he couldn't process the words. The shock was overwhelming. He hadn't expected this. He had hoped, sure, but he never truly believed it would happen. Not to someone like him. Maria's voice broke through his dazed thoughts. "What does it say?" Alex's voice cracked as he looked up at her. "I got it. I got the job." For a moment, the room seemed to fade away as he absorbed the news. He had done it. He had taken a leap and, against all odds, landed on the other side. Maria's face lit up with genuine joy, her eyes sparkling. "Alex, that's amazing. I knew you could do it." But even in the midst of the celebration, a part of him remained hesitant. This was it. The opportunity he had been waiting for, but it wasn't without sacrifice. Moving to California meant leaving everything behind. The familiarity of his life in the city, his job at the Sapphire, and his relationship with Maria, which had already begun to fray. The reality of what lay ahead began to settle in. "Thank you," Alex said softly, his voice full of emotion. "I don't know if I'm ready. It feels overwhelming." Maria reached across the table and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You are, Alex. You've been ready for this. You just had to believe it." And that's when the weight of it all hit him. He had been living in fear for so long, scared of taking risks, scared of failure. But this job, this new path, represented more than just career success. It represented the opportunity to finally take control of his life, to stop being passive, to stop waiting for something to happen. It was his choice now. The leap he had to take was no longer a question of if, but when. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. His mind was spinning with all the possibilities, but also with all the potential pitfalls. Could he truly succeed at this new job? Could he handle the pressure? What about Maria? What would this do to their relationship? The next morning, Alex called his boss at the Sapphire to give his notice. He had already made up his mind. He wasn't going to stay in the same place anymore. He was going to take a chance, no matter how scary it was. The conversation with Richard was brief, but it felt strange. He had spent so many years working at the Sapphire, yet as the words came out of his mouth, they felt almost surreal. "I'm leaving, Richard," Alex said. "I've got an opportunity, and I need to take it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Richard spoke again. "I can't say I'm not going to miss you, Alex, but I get it. You've always had bigger dreams than this place. Good luck." Alex hung up the phone, a sense of finality settling over him. This was it, the beginning of something new. It was all so terrifyingly real. But just as he was starting to feel the weight of it, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from Maria. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what you're doing, and I want you to know whatever happens, I'm here for you. I believe in you, Alex. You're going to do great things. Just don't forget about us, okay?" The words hit him like a ton of bricks. They were the encouragement he needed, but they were also a reminder of everything he had to lose. Alex sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the message, his mind overwhelmed by the decision that lay ahead. His heart was torn between the future he had always dreamed of and the life he had built with Maria. Could he have both? Or would this new chapter mean saying goodbye to the old one? For the first time in a long time, Alex didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing. The storm of emotions, the uncertainty, the fear, and the hope were all signs of something important. He was on the verge of something bigger than he had ever imagined. And despite the fears that whispered in his ear, he couldn't shake the feeling that, no matter what happened, he was finally stepping into the life he was meant to live. The calm before the storm was over. Now, the real journey was about to begin. The days after Alex accepted the job offer were a whirlwind of emotions. The initial shock of receiving the job was wearing off, replaced by a new wave of fear and excitement. He had made the decision to move forward, but now he had to face the reality of it. The anxiety about leaving everything behind was growing more palpable with each passing day, but the knowledge that he was stepping into something new, something meaningful, helped to steady his resolve. He spent the next few days sorting out the logistics, packing up his apartment, notifying friends, and preparing for the big move to California. The practicalities were daunting, but it was the emotional weight that kept him up at night. Saying goodbye to his life in New York wasn't easy, especially the relationship with Maria. As much as he cared for her, he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that things weren't the same between them anymore. There was a growing tension, a gap between who they were now and who they had been when they first started dating. Maria had been supportive of his decision to pursue the job, but she had her own reservations. Alex could see it in the way she looked at him, the quiet distance that had crept in between them. She tried to hide it, but he could feel her hesitations, and it made him question everything. Was this the right time for him to take this leap? Or was he walking away from something he hadn't fully understood yet? On the night before his departure, Maria came to visit him at his apartment. They sat in the living room, the familiar scent of takeout Chinese food filling the air. There was an awkward silence between them, as if they were both avoiding the inevitable conversation that was hanging in the air. Alex cleared his throat and spoke first. "Maria, I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us, about this job. And I know this isn't easy. I don't want you to think I'm abandoning you, because I'm not. But this is something I need to do for myself." Maria sighed deeply, her eyes sad but understanding. "I know, Alex. I really do. And I'm proud of you. I am. But I'm also scared. We've been together for so long, and I don't know if what we have, can survive this change. It's a big step for you, but it's a big step for me too." Alex felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just about his career anymore. It was about their future together. "I don't want to lose you, Maria, but I don't think I can stay in New York and keep living like I have been. I need this. I need to take this chance. I don't know what will happen, but I can't stay stuck here." She nodded, a tear escaping from her eye. "I get it, Alex. I do. But sometimes I wonder if you're running away from us, right here, right now. We've always talked about the future, but I've never really known if you're ready to build a life with me. I don't know if you're running towards something better or just running away from what we have." The words hit Alex hard. He had always thought that moving forward meant a clear path, but now it felt like everything was up in the air. Was he running away from his own life in New York? Was he abandoning the relationship they had worked so hard to build? Or was this simply the push he needed to break free from the self-doubt that had held him back for years? "I don't know anymore, Maria," Alex admitted, his voice trembling. "Maybe I've been running from everything for a long time, but I do know that this job, this move, it's the chance I've been waiting for, and I can't let it slip away. I don't want to live with regret." Maria wiped away her tears, her expression softening. "I want you to do what makes you happy, Alex. I really do. But I need to know that you're not doing this because you're afraid of facing what's right in front of you." The silence between them was thick with unspoken emotions. Alex wanted to tell her that he had figured it all out, that he knew exactly what he wanted. But the truth was, he didn't. He was scared. He was terrified of what this decision meant, both for his career and for their relationship. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. Maria stood up and walked to the window, her back to him. For a moment, she just stared out at the city lights, her silhouette framed by the fading glow of the evening. I know you don't, Alex, but I think you have to choose. Choose what's best for you, what's best for your future. And whatever that is, I'll support it. But I need you to be honest with me, with yourself. Alex nodded, feeling the weight of her words sink in. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all the choices they had made together, all the dreams they had built. But now, it felt like those dreams were becoming harder to hold on to. I'll always care about you, Maria. And I hope you know that, he said, his voice cracking. Maria turned to face him, a sad smile on her lips. I know. I really do. The conversation ended there, the finality of it hanging in the air like a thick fog. Alex wasn't sure if he was walking away from their relationship or if they were simply taking a break. Either way, he knew he had to do this for himself. He had to take the leap. The next morning, as he packed his bags and loaded them into a taxi headed for the airport, Alex took one last look around his apartment. It had been his home for years, a place where he had lived, loved, and dreamed. But now, it felt like a chapter closing, a door shutting behind him as he moved forward into the unknown. His phone buzzed as he sat in the back seat of the taxi. He picked it up, and to his surprise, it was an email from Maria. She had written just a few simple words. Take care of yourself, Alex. I believe in you. And no matter what happens, I'll always wish you the best. Alex stared at the message for a long time, feeling a mix of sadness and gratitude. It wasn't the farewell he had imagined, but it was enough. Enough to let him know that she understood. Enough to let him know that, despite everything, they both needed to move on in their own ways. As the taxi pulled away from the apartment building and headed toward the airport, Alex couldn't help but feel like he was stepping into a new life. The future was uncertain, the path unclear, but for the first time in years, he was ready to embrace it, ready to face whatever came next. The journey was just beginning. Alex's flight to California felt like a blur. He had hardly slept the night before, and the combination of excitement and nerves left him drained by the time the plane touched down in San Francisco. As the plane taxied to the gate, he looked out of the window at the sprawling city below, feeling a wave of both anticipation and disbelief wash over him. He had done it. He had made the leap. The airport was bustling, full of people with their own stories, their own paths, their own dreams. But for the first time, Alex didn't feel like just a small part of the crowd. He felt like he was stepping into his own story, one that he was writing, one that could turn out completely different from anything he had imagined. After picking up his luggage, Alex hailed a ride-share to his new apartment. He had already arranged for a small studio in the city's financial district, a modest place but perfect for his fresh start. He wanted a place of his own, a space to breathe and to think, a place that could help him focus on the new job ahead. The ride to his apartment was filled with the hum of traffic and the occasional honk of a horn. As the city passed by, Alex let the unfamiliarity of the scene soak in. The architecture, the people, the energy, it was all so different from New York, yet there was a strange comfort in it. It was a reminder that change wasn't always scary. Sometimes it was necessary. When Alex arrived at his apartment, he stood for a moment in the doorway, just looking at the empty space. The walls were bare, the floors gleaming with newness, and the air smelled faintly of fresh paint. It was a blank canvas, and for the first time in a long time, he felt excited about what he could create here. The next day, Alex started his first day at Tech Horizon. The office was sleek, modern, and filled with a sense of ambition that matched his own. It was everything he had imagined. Smart, driven people all working together to create something bigger than themselves. The pace was fast, the challenges real, and Alex thrived in the environment. He was introduced to his new team, a group of developers, marketers, and engineers all working toward the common goal of revolutionizing business software. They seemed kind and welcoming, but the pressure was on. They were tackling something huge, and the expectations for everyone were high. Throughout his first week, Alex threw himself into his work, doing everything he could to prove himself. He studied the product, asked questions, and attended every meeting with the kind of enthusiasm he hadn't felt in years. The work was hard, and the learning curve was steep, but there was a fire in him now, a drive that pushed him forward even when the exhaustion set in. But, as the days turned into weeks, Alex began to feel something creeping in, a sense of loneliness. It wasn't the kind of loneliness that came from being alone in a new city. It was the kind that came from leaving behind everything familiar. His friends, his old life, and most of all, Maria. He missed her more than he cared to admit. The quiet mornings they had spent together, the way she had always been able to read him, to understand his doubts even when he didn't voice them. There had been times, especially late at night when the city was quiet and his apartment felt overwhelmingly empty, that he found himself wondering if he had made the right choice. The job was everything he had hoped for, but it came at a price. He hadn't anticipated the emotional toll it would take, the isolation that would come from stepping into a life so completely different. One Friday evening, after a long week at work, Alex went to a nearby bar to clear his head. The dimly lit space had a cozy atmosphere, with soft jazz music playing in the background and the clinking of glasses creating a comforting hum. He sat at the bar, nursing a drink, and watched the people around him. There were groups of friends, couples, people enjoying their own company. It was the kind of place where anyone could find solace, if only for a moment. As he sat there, lost in his thoughts, he heard a familiar voice. "Alex." He turned around quickly, startled. Standing there, looking just as surprised as he felt, was Maria. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Maria was here. In California, in this bar of all places. He hadn't expected to see her again, certainly not like this. Not in the middle of a city that still felt foreign to him. But there she was, looking just as beautiful as he remembered. "Maria?" Alex said, his voice soft with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" She smiled, a little sheepishly. "I guess I'm just trying to find some peace. I came out here to visit a friend, but I thought I'd see how you were doing. I hope I'm not interrupting." Alex stood up, his heart racing. He wasn't sure what to say. There was so much left unsaid between them. So many things had changed, but at the same time, it felt like nothing had. "No, not at all," Alex said, his voice shaking slightly. It's been a strange few weeks. I didn't expect to see you here." "I know," Maria said, taking a seat next to him. She ordered a drink and then turned to face him. "I've been thinking about you a lot, Alex. And about us." The weight of her words hit him. He hadn't known how much he had been craving this moment, this chance to reconnect, until now. "I've been thinking about you too. About everything." Maria's eyes softened, and she reached out to gently touch his hand. "I'm proud of you, Alex. You've done something really brave. But I just wanted to see if you were okay. Really okay." Alex swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. He had spent so much time focusing on his career, on the future, that he hadn't given himself the space to process everything that had happened between them. The truth was, he wasn't sure if he was okay, but he knew he was getting there. Slowly. "I'm not sure if I'm okay yet," he admitted. "But I'm trying, Maria. I'm really trying." The two of them sat there for a while, talking, reminiscing about the past, and sharing their hopes and fears for the future. It wasn't the same as it had been before, but in that moment, it didn't matter. It felt like a small step toward something new, something that could be built from the foundation they had once shared. By the time they parted ways, Alex felt a sense of calm he hadn't realized he needed. It wasn't that everything was fixed, but the encounter had given him a new perspective. He didn't have to have all the answers right now. He didn't have to know exactly where his life was headed, but he was moving forward, one step at a time. The journey had just begun, and there was still so much to discover. About the job, about California, and most importantly, about himself. And for the first time, Alex felt ready to face whatever came next. The storm had passed, and the sun was starting to shine through. The weeks that followed Alex's impromptu reunion with Maria were both a mix of relief and growing tension. The conversation in the bar had brought a sense of clarity. He was on the right path, at least professionally, but something still gnawed at him. He had come to California to build a new life, to embrace his future, but the remnants of his past, particularly his relationship with Maria, hung heavily over him. At work, things were progressing. Tech Horizon was everything Alex had hoped for, a place of innovation, ideas, and opportunity. He quickly gained the respect of his colleagues with his work ethic and his ability to think outside the box. The team was growing tighter, and as Alex spent more time with them, he began to feel like part of something bigger. But despite the excitement of his new role, there was an emptiness. He had left so much behind. His old friends, his family, and, most significantly, Maria. He found himself missing her in ways he hadn't anticipated. When he first arrived in California, he had been determined to leave the past behind, to embrace the future without any lingering doubts. But the truth was, Maria was still on his mind. The words she had said in the bar, "I'm proud of you, Alex, but I just wanted to see if you were okay," kept replaying in his head. He wasn't sure what she meant by that, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't done enough to make things right between them. Meanwhile, his life in California was steadily shifting into a new rhythm. He had begun to form new friendships and even ventured into exploring the city on weekends. His apartment, once a cold and empty space, slowly began to feel like home. But when the nights grew quiet, the silence felt heavier than ever. He had no one to share his victories or frustrations with, and he often found himself reaching for his phone, wondering if Maria was still thinking about him. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, Alex sat in his apartment, his laptop open in front of him but his mind elsewhere. The emails he had been drafting lay unfinished, and his mind kept wandering back to the unanswered questions that haunted him about his past and future. The text he had received from Maria a few weeks ago had been the last real communication between them, and despite his attempts to move forward, her absence lingered in a way he hadn't expected. He grabbed his phone and typed out a message to her, hesitating for a moment before hitting send. It read, "Hey, Maria, I've been thinking about us. I'm settling in here, but there's still so much I need to figure out. I miss talking to you. I hope you're doing well." The moment the message was sent, he felt a rush of nervous energy. What was he expecting? Was he reaching out because he truly missed her, or because he was feeling the weight of his new life pressing down on him? Was he ready to confront the past, or was he simply searching for something familiar? The hours passed, and the message remained unanswered. Alex told himself to be patient, that it would take time, that Maria had her own life to live, just as he did. But the silence gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that the gap between them was widening, even if it was something neither of them could fully acknowledge. The following week, things began to escalate at work. Alex was assigned to a high-stakes project that involved a major pitch to a potential investor. His team was counting on him to deliver, and the pressure was mounting. Tech Horizon was at a pivotal moment, and this pitch could determine their future. Alex threw himself into the work, fully immersed in the project, but the stress began to take a toll. The long hours at the office, the constant meetings, the ever-present pressure to succeed. It was all starting to wear him down. One afternoon, while meeting with his team to finalize the presentation, Alex found himself zoning out. He couldn't concentrate. His mind kept drifting back to the conversations he had with Maria, and to the unresolved feelings that were surfacing once again. He had done what he thought was best by coming to California, but now he wasn't so sure. He didn't know how to balance this new life with the past he was trying to move beyond, and the weight of the decision he had made, the decision to leave everything behind, was beginning to feel like more than he could handle. As the days wore on, the tension between Alex's professional life and his personal life continued to build. He was excelling at work, but his emotional state was unraveling. He realized that the excitement of the job, the satisfaction of the new beginnings, didn't completely fill the emptiness he felt inside. There were still pieces of his past life, his relationship with Maria, his connections in New York, that he couldn't ignore. One day, as he was preparing for an important meeting, Alex received a phone call from an unknown number. He debated letting it go to voicemail but decided to answer. "Hello?" he said, his voice tinged with curiosity. "Alex," came the voice on the other end. It was Maria. His heart skipped a beat, and a surge of emotions rushed through him. He hadn't expected to hear from her, not like this. His mind raced, unsure of what to say. "Maria," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Is everything okay? I just... I wanted to talk, she said. Her tone was hesitant, but there was a sense of urgency in her voice. About what happened? About us. Alex's stomach tightened. The last thing he expected was for her to reach out now, especially when he was already struggling with his own feelings. But something about her words made him pause. Maybe this was the conversation he had been waiting for. Maybe this was the moment when everything would finally make sense. I've been thinking about it too, he said, his voice softer now. And I don't know what to say, Maria. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to make things harder. I thought I had to do this. For me. For my future. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Alex held his breath, waiting for her response. I know, Maria said quietly. I understand why you did it. But I think I've been avoiding the truth too. The truth about what we really wanted, and what I need to move forward. The words hung in the air, and Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He could feel the distance between them growing wider, a chasm of unspoken emotions and missed opportunities. He had taken the leap into the unknown, but now he was realizing that the road back to what he had left behind might be harder than he thought. Do you think there's still a chance for us, Maria? He asked, his voice thick with uncertainty. Another pause, longer this time. Then she spoke, her voice soft but resolute. I don't know, Alex. I don't know if we can go back to what we had. But maybe we both need to take some time to figure out who we are now, before we can know if we have a future. Alex let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of her words settle deep within him. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. This journey, this leap into the unknown, was far from over. The conflict was rising, both in his personal life and his career. And the choices he made now would shape everything that came next. But for the first time in a long time, Alex felt ready to face it. Whatever the storm held, he was prepared to walk through it. The days after his phone call with Maria felt like a blur to Alex. He was caught between the world he had built in California, the new job, the fresh city, the promise of a different future, and the life he had left behind in New York. The weight of the unresolved conversation hung heavily over him. Maria's words replayed in his mind constantly, the uncertainty of their relationship adding to the growing tension in his life. At work, the project he was leading was moving forward at full speed. There was no room for distractions. He had a huge presentation coming up, one that could make or break Tech Horizon's future with a major investor. His team was relying on him to be focused, and that focus had become more important than ever. But in the back of his mind, Alex couldn't ignore the nagging pull of his personal life. Maria's last message had left him questioning everything. The truth was, he wasn't sure if he was ready to let go of the past, of her. He wasn't sure if his decision to move to California had been the right one, or if it had been an escape from the difficult, complex parts of his life that he wasn't ready to face. But as much as he wanted to believe he could separate his professional and personal lives, the line between the two was starting to blur in ways he hadn't anticipated. On a quiet Wednesday afternoon, just as Alex was putting the finishing touches on his presentation slides, he received a text that immediately grabbed his attention. It was from Maria. Can we talk? I'm coming to California next weekend. I'd like to see you, if you're open to it. Let me know. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The message was both a relief and a source of anxiety. Maria was coming to California. This could be the conversation they both needed, the one that could finally give them clarity. But as the excitement bubbled up inside him, so did the fear. What if things had changed too much? What if there was no going back? He stared at the message for a long time, his fingers hovering over the screen. He could feel the pull of the past, but at the same time, he didn't want to derail everything he had worked for. He had a new life now, one that was taking shape, one that was full of promise. Could he really open the door to his past and risk losing it all? After a long moment of indecision, Alex typed back, I'd like to see you, Maria. Let's talk. When you get here, let me know. His heart pounded in his chest as he hit send, but he knew it was the right thing to do. He had been running from this conversation for too long. It was time to face it. The days leading up to Maria's visit were filled with a restless anticipation that Alex couldn't shake. Work became an escape, and he threw himself into his project with everything he had. The pressure was mounting, and as the presentation loomed closer, Alex found himself constantly thinking about the upcoming weekend. He had made his decision to embrace this new life, but a small part of him wondered if he was making a mistake. Would he be able to move forward if he reopened this door to the past? Finally, the day arrived. Maria texted him when she landed, and they arranged to meet at a coffee shop in the city. Alex arrived early, pacing nervously outside. The air in San Francisco was cool, and the bustling street felt both familiar and foreign. His mind was racing with questions. What had Maria been doing in the months since they last saw each other? Had she moved on, just like he had? Was there even room for them in each other's lives anymore? When Maria walked into the coffee shop, it felt like time had stopped. She was still the same Maria he remembered. Her presence undeniable, her smile still able to make his heart race. But there was something different about her, too. Her expression was calm, but there was an underlying sadness in her eyes that made Alex's stomach twist. She spotted him immediately and waved, her usual warmth evident despite the tension between them. He stood up, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Hey," he said, his voice catching slightly. "Hey," Maria replied, giving him a small smile. "It's good to see you." Alex motioned for her to sit, and they both took a seat at the small table. The air between them was charged with anticipation, the weight of everything they hadn't said hanging over them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Alex was searching for the right words, but nothing seemed to come. He had missed her more than he could admit, and yet he wasn't sure if he could go back. The life he had now, his new job, his independence, felt so fragile. Could he really go back to a life that was defined by uncertainty and longing? "I've been thinking about a lot of things," Maria said, breaking the silence. "About what you said, about your move. I think I was so focused on being upset that I didn't really understand why you needed to do this. I've realized I was maybe holding on to something that wasn't there anymore." Alex nodded, his throat tightening as she spoke. He had wanted to hear those words, but now that they were here, they didn't bring the relief he had expected. Instead, they just made him feel more conflicted than ever. Had he made the right choice? Had he been running from the past? Or was this the chance he needed to truly start over? "I think I've been holding on to the past, too," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I came here hoping I could escape everything, but I don't know if I can, and I don't know if I should." Maria looked at him, her gaze softening. "Alex, you can't run from who you are, and neither can I. We can't keep pretending we're okay when we're not. But we also can't keep holding on to something that's already over." The finality in her voice hit Alex like a ton of bricks. He had known this moment was coming, but hearing her say it out loud made everything real. They couldn't go back. Not to what they had. Not to the life they had once imagined. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I don't want to hurt you, Maria. I never wanted to. But I think we both need to move forward. In different ways." Maria nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I know. And maybe that's what we both need. Time. Space. To figure out who we are now." There was a long silence between them, the kind of silence that only comes when two people know something has changed forever. But despite the pain of it, Alex felt a sense of release, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He was finally facing the truth. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, catching up on each other's lives. But the conversation had shifted. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about what they both needed to move forward. And for the first time in months, Alex felt a sense of peace. He wasn't sure what his future held, but he knew he was on the right path, even if that path led him away from everything he once thought he wanted. As they said goodbye, Maria gave him a hug, a lingering embrace that felt both comforting and bittersweet. "Take care of yourself, Alex," she whispered. "I'll always care about you." "I know," he replied. "I'll always care about you too." And with that, she was gone, leaving Alex standing in the middle of the city, ready to continue his journey. Whatever that journey might be. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. Alex had finally let go of the past. He had taken the leap into the unknown, and now, he was ready to face whatever came next. The emotional weight from his meeting with Maria lingered long after their farewell. The conversation had given him some clarity, But it didn't make the ache go away. It was a sharp reminder that there was no going back, no chance to undo the choices he had made. But there was also a strange relief, a sense that a chapter in his life had closed. He knew he couldn't go back to what was, but he didn't have to stay stuck in the past. The question now was, what came next? Work, as it often did, became his escape. He dove headfirst into the project with a renewed determination, focusing on the upcoming investor pitch. The project was crucial for the company's future, and Alex was determined to make it a success, not just for himself but for the whole team. The constant meetings, deadlines, and sleepless nights became his new normal, and for a while, it worked. It was easier to bury his emotions in the work rather than confront the growing uncertainty he felt about his future. The pressure, however, began to mount. The investor pitch was just days away, and the team was frantically putting the final touches on the presentation. Alex had always been good under pressure, but this time, it felt different. The stakes were higher than ever, and he couldn't shake the feeling that if this presentation went wrong, everything he had worked for, the new life he had built, the new identity he was forging, could come crashing down. He spent long hours at the office, working late into the night with his team. The stress was beginning to take its toll. His body ached from exhaustion, and his mind felt constantly on edge. He couldn't remember the last time he had slept for more than a few hours at a stretch, and it was starting to show. His concentration was slipping, his ability to think clearly was fading, and the pressure to succeed felt suffocating. But there was no turning back now. The presentation was set, the final preparations were underway, and Alex had to give it everything he had. That afternoon, as the team gathered in the conference room for a final rehearsal, Alex felt a knot form in his stomach. The team had done everything they could to perfect the presentation. The slides were sharp, the numbers were solid, and the narrative was compelling. It was a flawless plan. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. "You okay, man?" Ethan, one of the senior analysts on the team, asked him as they reviewed their notes. "You seem a little off today." Alex looked up from his laptop, his eyes heavy from lack of sleep. He forced a smile, trying to push through the exhaustion. "Yeah, I'm good. Just a lot on my mind, you know?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "If you say so. But this is important. Don't let anything throw you off." Alex nodded, but inside, he wasn't sure if he could keep up the facade much longer. The pressure of the presentation wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about proving to himself that he hadn't made a mistake by coming to California. It was about proving that all the sacrifices he had made, leaving behind his family, his old life, and even Maria, were worth it. The rehearsal continued, with the team running through the presentation again and again, fine-tuning every detail. But as the day wore on, Alex found it harder to focus. His mind kept drifting to the phone call with Maria, to the conversation that had left him feeling both relieved and unsure. He realized he hadn't fully processed what it meant to let go of the past, to move on from the life he had once known. By the time the rehearsal wrapped up, it was already late in the evening. Alex's head was spinning, and his energy was completely depleted. He sent a quick message to his team, telling them to get some rest before the big day. As he packed up his things and prepared to leave the office, he couldn't shake the sense of unease that was gnawing at him. The presentation was only hours away, and he had never felt more unprepared. As he stepped out into the cool night air, Alex realized that he wasn't just worried about the pitch. He was worried about everything: the future, his place at Tech Horizon, his decision to leave New York, and whether he could really move on from everything that had come before. He had come to California to start fresh, to build a new identity, but the weight of the past was still pulling at him, even from thousands of miles away. His phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking him from his thoughts. It was a message from Ethan. "You sure you're okay? We need you sharp for tomorrow." Alex stared at the message for a long time, his thumb hovering over the screen. He wanted to reply, to tell Ethan that he was fine, but the truth was, he didn't feel fine. He didn't feel like himself anymore. He had thrown himself into his work to escape the emotional turmoil he had been feeling, but now he was realizing that avoiding the past wasn't going to solve anything. It was only making things worse. With a heavy sigh, he typed back, "I'm good. Just need some rest. I'll be ready." But as he looked out at the San Francisco skyline, the weight of everything he had been avoiding hung over him like a storm cloud. The presentation was just one hurdle, one challenge that he had to overcome. But it wasn't the only one. The real challenge, Alex realized, was learning to live with the uncertainty of the future, learning to reconcile the life he had left behind with the new one he was building. The next morning, as Alex prepared for the pitch, he felt a knot in his stomach that wouldn't loosen. It wasn't just the pressure of the investor presentation. It was the realization that no matter what happened today, his journey wasn't over. Whether the presentation went well or not, he would still have to face the deeper questions that lingered inside him. As he entered the conference room, the team gathered around the sleek, modern table, their faces a mix of excitement and anxiety. The investors' representatives had arrived, and the stakes were higher than ever. Alex stood at the front, ready to lead the presentation, but his mind kept racing. He couldn't focus. His thoughts kept circling back to Maria, to the life he had left behind, and to the uncertainty of his future. And then, as the lights dimmed and the presentation began, Alex realized that no matter how much he tried to separate his personal life from his work, the two were more connected than he ever expected. His uncertainty, his emotional conflict, it was all there, in the way he spoke, in the decisions he made. His ability to succeed, to truly build a new life, depended not just on his professional skills, but on his ability to confront the past. The first slide appeared on the screen. Alex took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice steady but uncertain. The opening slide was crisp and clean, showcasing the bold vision that had been months in the making. Alex's voice echoed slightly in the sleek conference room as his team began the investor pitch. He could feel the weight of the room, the tension hanging in the air, but his mind was elsewhere. As the presentation progressed, his thoughts drifted between the slides, the numbers, and, most poignantly, the conversation he'd had with Maria just days before. He had always been able to compartmentalize. Work was work, and his personal life was separate. But now, for the first time, he realized that the line between the two was much blurrier than he had ever admitted to himself. The weight of that realization hit him in the middle of his pitch, as he outlined the growth potential of Tech Horizon's upcoming product launch. His voice faltered for just a fraction of a second, but in that brief moment, the thought of his uncertain future swirled inside him, pulling his focus away from the task at hand. Ethan, who was presenting the technical details behind the product's innovation, gave him a quick glance. Alex could see the concern in his eyes. Ethan was picking up on the tension. The room was full of sharp, attentive investors, and Alex couldn't afford to let his mind wander. He forced himself to stay present, to snap out of his inner turmoil. He couldn't allow himself to fail. Not now. As the presentation continued, the investors leaned in, asking thoughtful questions. They seemed impressed, nodding along, and Alex could feel a surge of adrenaline that pushed him back into the moment. But just as he thought he was regaining control, one of the lead investors, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rachel Foster, leaned forward, fixing Alex with a piercing stare. "Alex," Rachel said, her voice calm but direct, "you've presented a compelling case for this product, but I sense there's something more here. Something personal. You're not just presenting a product, you're presenting yourself. Can you tell us why this product is so important to you, on a personal level?" Alex froze. The question felt like a punch to the gut. He had prepared meticulously for everything else, but this question, this personal question, caught him off guard. It wasn't about the numbers, the projections, or even the market trends anymore. It was about him. The truth was, Alex hadn't been honest with himself about why he was so invested in this project, why he had pushed so hard to leave everything behind and come to California. His mind scrambled for a response. He wanted to be poised, to give a confident answer, but in that moment, it all felt too raw. He glanced briefly at his team, who were waiting for him to respond, and then his eyes drifted toward the window, where the fog of San Francisco enveloped the city skyline. The familiar sense of isolation crept in. How had he ended up here? How had he come so far, yet still feel so distant from everything he thought he wanted? "Honestly, Rachel," Alex began, his voice quieter than he intended, "I've been running from something. From a life that I thought wasn't for me anymore. A life that, he paused, fighting to keep his emotions in check. A life that was full of things I didn't know how to face. But this product, this company, it's my chance to prove to myself that I can start over, that I can rebuild, that I can do something bigger than just escape. The room fell silent, the weight of his admission hanging in the air. Alex could feel his heart racing, the vulnerability he had never allowed himself to show now out in the open. He had never been this honest with anyone, especially in front of a room full of investors who expected calculated professionalism. Rachel didn't break eye contact with him. Her expression softened slightly, and Alex could see the understanding in her eyes. "That's exactly what we want to hear, Alex," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "We're not just investing in a product. We're investing in the people behind it. And from what I can see, you've got the passion and determination to make it work. We want to be part of that journey." The room seemed to relax after Rachel's words. Alex swallowed hard, his mind still spinning from the raw honesty of the moment. He hadn't expected to feel such a sense of release in front of the investors. He had come to California to prove himself, but in doing so, he had inadvertently closed himself off. He had buried his personal struggles, his heartbreak, his fears of failure, all beneath the facade of professionalism and ambition. And yet, here in this moment, with his guard down, he had found something that made everything else fall into place. The rest of the presentation went smoothly, though Alex felt a new sense of calm settle over him. The investors asked their questions, his team answered confidently, and by the time the meeting concluded, there was a sense of optimism in the air. Rachel Foster shook his hand as the meeting wrapped up, and her words stayed with him. "You've got our interest, Alex," she said. "Now go make it happen." As they walked out of the conference room, Alex felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. It had gone well, far better than he had expected. But there was something else, something more important than the approval of the investors. For the first time in months, he felt like he had taken a step forward, not just in his career, but in his life. He had finally let go of the past, even if just for a moment. He had spoken from the heart, not just as a CEO, but as a person who was trying to find his way. The team gathered in the lobby to celebrate the successful pitch, but Alex found himself standing off to the side, taking it all in. His mind was still reeling from the emotional weight of the moment. The relief that the presentation had gone well was overwhelming, but so was the realization that he had been holding on to something much bigger than the project at hand. It wasn't just about Tech Horizon or his career. It was about him. He stepped outside for a moment, needing a breath of fresh air. The fog had cleared slightly, and the city looked different in the bright afternoon light. It was a city of opportunity, of new beginnings, but it was also a place where he had to confront his past in order to move forward. As he stood on the street corner, Alex took out his phone and hesitated for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, he dialed Maria's number. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. "Alex?" Her voice was soft, almost as if she hadn't expected to hear from him. "Hey, Maria," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I just wanted to say, I think I finally get it. I think I'm ready to move forward." There was a long pause, and Alex held his breath, waiting for her response. "I'm proud of you, Alex," she said, her voice warm, "and I'm glad you're starting to see what I saw in you." In that moment, Alex realized that his journey wasn't just about proving himself to the world. It was about embracing who he was, flaws and all. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first step in truly starting over. The days following the pitch felt like a blur, as if the whirlwind of the past few months had finally settled into a quiet rhythm. Tech Horizon was on track to secure the investors, and with that, Alex's future felt a little more certain. But despite the professional victory, there was still something tugging at him, something deeper that he couldn't ignore. The relief from the pitch was real, but it hadn't erased the personal questions that had been festering beneath the surface. The phone call with Maria had brought clarity, but also a deep sense of sadness. He was moving forward, but in a way that meant saying goodbye to certain parts of his past. He had learned that progress didn't always mean forward motion in the way he expected. Sometimes, it meant letting go of what you thought you wanted and embracing something new, even if it wasn't immediately clear what that something was. The morning after the pitch, Alex woke up to a message from Ethan. "Hey man, great job yesterday. We did it. But you seemed a little distant during the wrap-up. Everything okay?" It was a simple text, yet it carried weight. Ethan had been one of the few people who seemed to understand that Alex wasn't just a workaholic CEO but someone grappling with deeper struggles. But Alex didn't have the energy to get into it right now. He replied with a brief message, "Yeah, just processing. Thanks, Ethan." Alex stood by his window, looking out at the San Francisco skyline, the city stretching out before him in a maze of possibilities. The fog had cleared, revealing the city in all its glory, shiny, vibrant, and full of potential. But underneath the allure, Alex knew he had to reconcile the life he had left behind with the future that was slowly unfolding before him. After a long, hot shower, Alex dressed in his usual work attire, a clean, pressed shirt and chinos, ready to face another day. He had meetings lined up, emails to respond to, and the pressure of the growing responsibilities at Tech Horizon. But something felt different now. He didn't feel the same urgency he had before. The gnawing uncertainty that had haunted him was still there, but he had made a decision. He was going to lean into this new chapter of his life, no matter how uncertain or uncomfortable it might feel. As he stepped into the office, Ethan was waiting for him. "Hey, you're early today," Ethan remarked, his voice filled with the usual banter that made their friendship so easy. Alex smiled, trying to shake off the lingering heaviness. "Yeah, thought I'd get a jump on the day. Let's get this place rolling." But as they sat down for their first meeting of the day, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, not just with the company, but with him. He was still Alex, the driven CEO, but he was also someone who had faced the reality of his own emotional landscape. He had admitted to himself that he couldn't keep running from his past, and that letting go wasn't a sign of weakness but of strength. Later that afternoon, Alex found himself walking through the office, checking in with various departments, answering questions, and making decisions that would shape the company's future. It was a routine that had become second nature to him, but today, it felt like he was stepping into his role with a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just the leader of a tech company. He was a person who had learned to embrace uncertainty and move forward, even when it was uncomfortable. By the end of the week, everything was falling into place. The investors were officially on board, and the team was buzzing with excitement about the next phase of the project. Alex felt a sense of pride as he walked through the office, seeing his team work with passion and dedication. But even more than the professional success, Alex realized that the most important change had been within himself. He wasn't just building a company. He was rebuilding his own sense of self. That weekend, Alex decided to take some time for himself. He drove up the coast to a small, quiet town, away from the noise of the city. It was a place he had visited once before, a peaceful retreat where he could clear his mind. He spent the day hiking through the woods, taking in the fresh air, and reflecting on everything that had happened since he first arrived in California. It was there, amidst the trees and the stillness, that Alex realized how far he had come. He had left behind a life that no longer served him, but in doing so, he had learned to trust himself again. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to face whatever came next. As he sat on a large rock by the edge of a quiet lake, he pulled out his phone and sent a message to Maria. "I'm learning to move forward, Maria. I'm still figuring it out, but I think I'm getting there." A few minutes later, her reply came through. "I'm glad to hear that, Alex. You deserve all the good things coming your way." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything they had shared. The connection they had, though strained by distance and time, still existed. And maybe that was enough for now. That evening, as the sun began to set over the calm waters of the lake, Alex felt a quiet sense of peace settle within him. He wasn't looking for answers, and he didn't have all the solutions. But he was learning that life wasn't about having it all figured out. It was about taking each step forward, even when the path ahead was unclear. As the sky turned dark and the first stars appeared, Alex smiled softly to himself. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Back in San Francisco, Tech Horizon was on track to revolutionize the industry, and Alex was finally ready to lead it. Not just as a CEO, but as a person who had faced his fears and found a new sense of purpose. And as the future stretched out before him, full of possibilities and challenges, Alex knew one thing for sure. It wasn't about avoiding the past. It was about accepting it, learning from it, and using it to build something better. The next chapter of his life was just beginning, and he was ready for whatever came next. The days after Alex's reflective weekend in the small coastal town felt lighter, somehow. He returned to San Francisco with a new sense of purpose, a clearer mind, and an inner peace he hadn't known in years. The pressure that had once felt unbearable seemed more manageable now, as if he could face it with the same determination that had once propelled him to chase his dreams. Tech Horizon was thriving, the investors were satisfied, and everything was falling into place, at least on the surface. However, there was one piece of the puzzle that still didn't fit. Despite the success and the promise of a bright future, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He had focused so long on building his career, on proving himself to everyone, including, in many ways, to himself, that he had neglected something just as important: the relationships that could help him grow beyond the role of CEO. On a Tuesday morning, as he sat at his desk in his downtown office, reviewing the next quarter's goals, Alex's phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. "Yo, big news. You free for lunch today?" Alex looked up from his screen, intrigued. Ethan didn't usually message unless there was something important going on. He typed back quickly, "Sure, what's up?" A few moments later, Ethan responded with a single sentence. "It's time for you to meet someone." That was it. No context, no details. Alex couldn't help but laugh at the cryptic nature of the message. Ethan was always like that, direct, yet oddly mysterious. But the curiosity gnawed at him. He hadn't made many new friends since moving to California, and while his team was solid, he wasn't exactly in the market for new relationships. But Ethan was someone he trusted, and if he thought it was time for Alex to meet someone, then it was worth exploring. Alex sent a quick reply, "All right, let's do it." "Where?" "I'll pick you up at noon," came the answer. True to his word, Ethan arrived promptly at 12 o'clock. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a woman in her late 20s, with dark, wavy hair and a warm smile. She had an energy about her that immediately felt welcoming. Alex stood up from his desk to greet them. "Alex, this is Rachel," Ethan said, his voice tinged with excitement. "Rachel, this is Alex." Rachel extended her hand with a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you," she said, her tone genuine and confident. Alex shook her hand, still a little confused about why Ethan had brought her into the picture. "It's great to meet you, Rachel. I wasn't expecting this." Ethan laughed, as though it was exactly the response he was hoping for. I know. But trust me, this is going to be good." The three of them left the office and walked to a nearby cafe, the brisk San Francisco air keeping them all alert as they talked. Alex had known Ethan long enough to know when he was up to something. As they sat down at a small table outside, Ethan wasted no time. "So, Rachel here," he began, "is the head of an incredible nonprofit in the city. She's doing some amazing work with youth empowerment, and her vision for social change is something you're going to want to hear about. I think there's a connection between what you're doing at Tech Horizon and what she's doing. I think you two can learn from each other." Alex raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected this kind of lunch meeting, and certainly not the connection that Ethan was hinting at. "A nonprofit? I thought we were just having lunch," Alex said with a chuckle, though the wheels in his mind were already turning. Rachel smiled warmly, seemingly unfazed by his teasing. I know, but it's all about impact. What you're doing at Tech Horizon, innovating and creating change, isn't so different from what I'm trying to do. We're both in the business of making the world better, just in different ways." Alex leaned back in his chair, intrigued by her words. He wasn't accustomed to conversations like this, not in a professional setting. Usually, the focus was on numbers, profits, and growth. But Rachel wasn't talking about numbers, she was talking about meaning. "What's the vision?" Alex asked, genuinely curious now. Rachel's eyes lit up as she spoke. "Our mission is to connect underrepresented youth with resources, mentorship, and opportunities to develop their leadership skills. I've seen firsthand how access to knowledge, to technology, can change lives. And that's where I think there's room for collaboration. Tech Horizon has access to cutting-edge technology, and my organization has the networks and the passion. We can create programs that give young people the tools they need to succeed, not just in tech, but in life. Alex was struck by the sincerity in her voice. It was clear that Rachel wasn't just passionate about her work, she was living it. And as much as Alex had poured his heart into his career, he had never thought about it in this way. He had focused on the business side of things, on growth and profits, but what if he could leverage the company's success for something deeper? What if he could make a difference, not just in the tech world, but in people's lives? The rest of the lunch was spent discussing the potential for collaboration. Ethan, as always, played the role of connector, guiding the conversation and making suggestions. But it was clear that Rachel and Alex had an immediate understanding. They had different skills, different goals, but they both wanted to create change. They both wanted to leave a mark on the world that was about more than just profits or products. It was about impact. It was about legacy. As they finished their meal and said their goodbyes, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. He hadn't expected the lunch to lead to anything, but he was walking away with a new perspective, one that tied together his professional life with something far more meaningful. He knew there was a lot of work ahead, but this was a step towards something that felt more like purpose than success. "Thanks for setting that up, Ethan," Alex said as they walked back to the office. "I didn't see that coming, but I'm glad we met." Ethan gave him a knowing smile. "I told you it would be good. Sometimes you need a little nudge to see the bigger picture." As they returned to the office, Alex found himself reflecting on the conversation with Rachel. She had opened his eyes to a new way of thinking, about success, about leadership, and about what it meant to create a legacy. It wasn't just about what you achieved for yourself, but what you did for others. And maybe, just maybe, that was the key to truly finding fulfillment in his career and his life. The day ended on a high note as Alex reviewed the plans for the next phase of Tech Horizon's growth. But now, his thoughts were drifting to something beyond spreadsheets and timelines. He was beginning to realize that success, true success, wasn't just about innovation in the tech world. It was about creating a lasting impact. And with the connections he was starting to make, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose, one that would guide him through the next chapters of his life. Things were starting to come together. It was a week after that lunch with Rachel, and Alex had spent the past few days reflecting on the conversation. As much as he appreciated the success Tech Horizon was experiencing, there was now a part of him that yearned for something more. Rachel's vision had sparked something inside him, a desire to make a difference that wasn't just tied to profits or technology. The following Friday, as Alex sat at his desk reviewing reports, he received an unexpected email. It was from Rachel. "Hi Alex. I hope this email finds you well. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation, and I wanted to reach out again. I truly believe that there's an incredible opportunity here for us to collaborate, bring our respective strengths together to create something meaningful. Would you be open to a follow-up meeting next week? I'd love to explore how we can start turning our ideas into action. Looking forward to hearing from you. Best, Rachel." Alex smiled as he read her message. There was no doubt in his mind that she was genuinely committed to making a positive impact, and after their lunch, he had a sense that this was something he couldn't ignore. Maybe it wasn't just about pushing forward with Tech Horizon's growth anymore. It was about integrating his company's success with something that mattered beyond the bottom line. He quickly typed out a response. "Hi Rachel. Thanks for reaching out. I've been thinking about our conversation as well, and I'd be thrilled to explore how we can work together. Let's set up a meeting next week. I'll reach out to coordinate a time. Best, Alex." He hit send, his excitement palpable. As he leaned back in his chair, Alex allowed himself a moment of clarity. It was as if a new chapter of his journey had begun. Tech Horizon wasn't just going to be a tech company. It was going to be a company with a purpose, one that used its resources to lift others. That thought felt better than any successful pitch or growth chart ever could. The following Tuesday, Alex met with Rachel again. This time, they were joined by two members of her team, a young woman named Sarah, who handled community outreach, and a seasoned strategist named Mark. They gathered at Tech Horizon's sleek conference room, the perfect space for what Alex was beginning to realize was a pivotal meeting in his life. Rachel began the discussion with a simple question. "Alex, when we last met, You mentioned the possibility of integrating your technology into our programs. How do you envision that looking? Alex sat forward, his mind racing with possibilities. He had been thinking about it nonstop since their lunch. Well, one of the things Tech Horizon excels at is simplifying complex tech for everyday use. Our new educational platform could be a great starting point. If we can partner with your team to get the platform in front of the youth you work with, it could open up access to technology that they might otherwise never have experienced. Mark, the strategist, leaned in with a thoughtful expression. You're talking about providing educational resources through technology. But we'll need to ensure that these kids not only have access, but the guidance they need to use these tools effectively. I know a lot of programs that struggle with making that bridge. Rachel nodded, agreeing with his concerns. That's why we need to create a robust mentorship system alongside the tech. You're not just giving them a tool, you're giving them a path. We need people who will guide them, teach them how to use the technology to help them grow, and show them the doors it can open for them. Alex looked at Rachel, feeling more certain about this vision than anything he had in a long time. I agree. I think we could integrate the tech with a mentorship program, possibly even use your organization's network to recruit volunteers. We could set up a platform where young people can access tech resources, but also reach out to mentors for guidance. I want to make it not just about education but empowerment. Sarah, who had been quiet up until now, spoke up. If we can combine that with our current outreach programs, we could reach a wider audience. I know a lot of students who are eager to learn but don't have access to the right tools. This could be a game changer. As they continued discussing, Alex realized just how much potential this partnership had. It wasn't just about putting a product in the hands of underprivileged youth. It was about making a real, lasting difference in their lives. He had always prided himself on being an innovator in the tech world, but this felt like something entirely different. He was beginning to see how tech could truly change lives, not just by making things more efficient or profitable, but by connecting people to opportunities they never thought possible. The meeting ended with a sense of mutual excitement. Rachel, Sarah, Mark, and Alex agreed to a plan to move forward with a pilot program. They would begin by integrating Tech Horizon's platform into Rachel's existing programs, providing resources and mentoring tools for the youth they worked with. If it succeeded, it could be expanded to other communities. As Alex walked back to his office after the meeting, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope for the future. Not just for his company, but for the people who would benefit from this new initiative. He wasn't just leading a tech company anymore. He was leading a movement that could help reshape the way people thought about technology and its potential to do good in the world. Later that evening, as Alex sat in his apartment, he reflected on everything that had led him to this point. He had spent years running away from his past, pushing himself to be the best, to prove himself. But now, as he thought about the partnership with Rachel and the potential to make a difference, he realized that he was finally embracing who he was meant to be. A leader. But not just a leader in the business sense. He was becoming a leader who could inspire change. The phone buzzed on his coffee table, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a message from Maria. Hey Alex, I saw some news about Tech Horizon's latest developments. It's amazing to see what you're doing. I'm really proud of you. Alex smiled as he read her message. He hadn't spoken to her much recently, but her words meant more than she probably realized. It felt good to know that someone from his past recognized the changes he was going through. And it reminded him that the journey wasn't just about what he was building in the business world. It was about the person he was becoming. Thanks, Maria, he replied. I think I'm finally figuring things out. I'm starting to understand what really matters. As he sent the message, Alex realized that this was the beginning of something bigger. It wasn't just about Tech Horizon's success, or even his personal growth. It was about making a difference. For himself, for others, and for the world. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Alex was excited to see where it would take him. After the meeting with Rachel and her team, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. The partnership with Rachel's nonprofit was beginning to take shape, and with it came a new vision for Tech Horizon, one that focused on impact as much as innovation. He could already see the potential, a program that not only taught young people how to use technology, but also empowered them to change their own lives. The idea had ignited something deep within him, However, as the weeks progressed, Alex found that the path forward wasn't as smooth as he had hoped. There were obstacles, both external and internal, that he hadn't anticipated. Running a tech company was challenging enough, but now, with the added complexity of a new initiative that straddled both business and social impact, things were beginning to feel overwhelming. The first major hurdle came when it was time to present the program to the board of directors. Alex had expected some resistance. After all, Tech Horizon was a business, and business wasn't always in the habit of supporting causes that didn't directly impact the bottom line. But he hadn't expected the pushback to feel so personal. The board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Alex had prepared thoroughly, organizing data on the potential impact of the program, projections for how Tech Horizon could benefit from corporate social responsibility, and examples from other successful tech nonprofit collaborations. He was ready, or so he thought. As he walked into the sleek, glass-walled conference room, the atmosphere felt tense. The board members were already seated, their expressions serious, with some of them absent-mindedly scrolling through their phones. When Alex began speaking, he tried to maintain his usual confidence, despite the knot that had started forming in his stomach. "I'm excited to share the details of a new initiative that we've been working on," Alex began. "As many of you know, we've been exploring ways to use our platform not only to innovate within the tech industry, but to make a lasting social impact. We've begun a partnership with a nonprofit focused on providing underserved youth access to technology and mentorship. I believe this is a unique opportunity for Tech Horizon to not only give back to the community, but also to position ourselves as leaders in the corporate social responsibility space." He paused, watching as a few board members exchanged skeptical glances. David, one of the more vocal members, leaned forward and raised an eyebrow. "So let me get this straight, Alex," he said, his tone measured but skeptical. "You're suggesting that we divert resources, money, time, focus, from our core business into social programs? I understand the value of corporate responsibility, but where is the return on this? How does this benefit the bottom line?" Alex felt a tightness in his chest. He had expected the question, but the way David framed it made it sound more like an accusation than an inquiry. He had rehearsed for this moment, but now, under the cold gaze of the board members, his rehearsed words felt inadequate. "David, I understand your concern," Alex replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I believe that businesses today must evolve. It's no longer enough to simply provide a product or service. Consumers and investors are increasingly looking at the broader impact of a company. This initiative isn't just about philanthropy. It's about creating a sustainable future, one where Tech Horizon can thrive not just because of the products we sell, but because we are making a tangible difference in the world." Another board member, Karen, chimed in. "I agree with David. While it's noble to want to give back, we have to remember that our responsibility is to shareholders. We're a company, not a charity. If this initiative is going to take up significant resources, it better show concrete returns. Otherwise, it's just a distraction." Alex's heart raced as the conversation spiraled into a series of questions and objections. It wasn't that he hadn't expected some resistance. It was that the resistance felt more personal than he had imagined. He had believed in the vision so deeply, and now, in the face of opposition, he couldn't help but feel self-doubt creeping in. Was he wrong? Was he pushing Tech Horizon in the wrong direction? When the meeting finally ended, Alex felt deflated. He walked back to his office in a daze, the weight of the board's disapproval heavy on his shoulders. He sat down at his desk, staring at the reports he had prepared for the meeting. Everything had been laid out logically, with clear benefits to both the company and the community. So why did it feel like the board didn't understand? Ethan knocked on his office door and stepped in, his usual bright demeanor replaced by a look of concern. "How'd it go?" he asked, crossing the room to sit across from Alex. Alex exhaled deeply, his frustration bubbling up. "It was rough. I don't know. I thought they'd see the value in this, but it felt like they were just looking at the numbers. They don't get it, Ethan. They don't see the bigger picture." Ethan leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. "You've been fighting for this idea for months. And just because one meeting didn't go as planned doesn't mean it's over. If anything, it's a sign that you need to keep pushing. You know better than anyone that the greatest ideas often come with the toughest opposition." Alex rubbed his eyes. I thought I could make them see it. I thought this initiative could be a way to prove that a business doesn't have to be just about profits. But I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm trying to force something that doesn't belong here. Ethan shook his head, his expression unwavering. You're not forcing anything. What you're doing is reshaping the conversation. And that's never easy. If you believe in this, you have to stand by it. But also, maybe it's time to rethink how you present it. Maybe it's not just about proving that this is a good idea. Maybe it's about showing them why it's essential to the future of Tech Horizon. You have to make them see that this is who we're becoming. Alex sat in silence, the weight of Ethan's words sinking in. The doubt he was feeling wasn't just about the board's reaction. It was about his own commitment to the change he wanted to see. He had spent so many years pushing toward success, but now he was pushing toward something that could actually make a difference, not just for his company, but for people who didn't have the same opportunities he had. He couldn't let that go. Not now. The next few days were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and sleepless nights as Alex worked to refine his pitch. He restructured his approach, making it clear that this initiative wasn't just an afterthought. It was a strategic shift for Tech Horizon. He framed the social impact program not as an external charity, but as an investment in the company's long-term sustainability, a way to lead the tech industry into a future where businesses weren't just driven by profits, but by purpose. By the time the next board meeting came around, Alex felt more confident. He wasn't just asking for approval anymore. He was showing them why this initiative was the future of Tech Horizon. When the discussion began again, this time Alex stood firm, presenting a new set of data. Consumer trends, the growing importance of corporate responsibility, and how integrating social impact into their business model would differentiate Tech Horizon in a competitive market. It wasn't an easy conversation. There were still questions, but this time, Alex had the answers. He had found a way to make the board see what he had already known in his heart. This wasn't just the right thing to do. It was the smart thing to do. As the meeting came to a close, Alex could see the shift in the room. Slowly but surely, the board members were beginning to come around. The most vocal skeptics, David and Karen, didn't seem entirely convinced, but they were listening. And for the first time, Alex felt like he wasn't just fighting for an idea. He was leading the charge for something bigger than himself. As the meeting adjourned, Ethan gave him a supportive clap on the back. "Nice job," he said quietly. "You didn't back down." Alex nodded, a sense of quiet pride settling over him. He wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. But today had been a win, and for the first time, he was starting to believe that this was more than just a business idea. It was the beginning of something that could change everything, and he was ready to fight for it. The board meeting had been a success, at least, in part. While they hadn't given Alex the full green light he'd hoped for, they had agreed to move forward with a smaller pilot program. It wasn't everything he'd wanted, but it was a start. And sometimes, as Alex was learning, a start was all you needed. But in the days that followed, something started to gnaw at him. The questions and skepticism of the board still lingered in his mind. Despite their reluctant agreement, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were still looking at him like he was wasting his time. The pressure weighed heavily on him, especially as the news of his initiative started to spread within the company. There were whispers in the halls, half-hearted support from some of his colleagues, and outright opposition from others who saw this project as a distraction from their core work. One afternoon, as Alex walked into his office, he found an email from David, one of the board members who had been most critical of the project. The subject line was blunt: "Follow-up on Tech Horizon Initiative." "Alex," the email began, "I've been thinking a lot about your proposal, and I'm still not convinced that this is a path we should be pursuing. I understand your desire to give back, but we need to focus on our core business. I've spoken to a few other board members, and they share similar concerns. I suggest we revisit this conversation in a few months and assess whether it's still the right move. Let's focus on increasing revenue and market share for now." Alex read the email twice. His heart sank as he processed the words. It wasn't just a disagreement, it was a direct challenge to his vision. David was essentially saying that the social impact initiative wasn't even worth pursuing for the moment. He couldn't help but feel like his resolve was being tested in ways he hadn't anticipated. The weight of the situation hit Alex hard. He had worked tirelessly to present this idea, to make the board see the long-term benefits, and here was David, one of the people who had the power to shape the future of the company, questioning his leadership. He slammed his laptop shut, the sound reverberating through the silence of his office. He needed to talk to someone who understood. He picked up the phone and dialed Rachel's number. "Hey, Alex." Rachel's voice was warm and cheerful, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in his mind. "Hey, Rachel. I need to talk," he said, his voice strained. "It's the board. They're pushing back harder than I thought. David just emailed me saying that we should shelve the initiative for now. He wants to focus on revenue and market share. It feels like they don't understand what we're trying to do." There was a brief silence on the other end before Rachel responded, her tone gentle but firm. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I need you to remember something. They're looking at this from a different perspective. They see dollars and cents, while you see the bigger picture, the future. But here's the thing, Alex. This is your idea. You believe in it, and that's what's going to get you through. You've got to stay the course." Alex let out a long breath, feeling the tension release slightly. "I know. It's just hard. Sometimes it feels like I'm trying to move the whole world on my own. I'm not sure they'll ever see what I see." "You don't have to do this alone," Rachel replied. "You've got a team behind you. You've got me, and you've got the people who believe in this initiative. And let's not forget, this is about more than just them. It's about what you're trying to create. And that's worth fighting for." Alex nodded, even though Rachel couldn't see him. Her words resonated with him deeply. He was trying to do something more than just make a successful company. He was trying to build a legacy, something that could change the trajectory of people's lives. He took a deep breath and cleared his throat. "Thanks, Rachel. I really needed to hear that." "Anytime," she said warmly. "And just so you know, I'm behind you 100%. Don't let anyone make you doubt your vision." Alex hung up the phone with a renewed sense of clarity. Rachel was right. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. The board wasn't going to change overnight, and the people within his company might never fully understand the direction he was taking. But that wasn't going to stop him. He wasn't just fighting for a project or a cause. He was fighting for a movement. The next day, Alex stood in front of his team. Ethan, Sarah, and a handful of key leaders from Tech Horizon had gathered for a meeting to discuss the next steps for the initiative. He had been debating how to approach this meeting, knowing that some of the team members might share the doubts that the board had expressed. But as he stood there, looking at the faces of the people who had been with him through thick and thin, he knew that now was the time to push forward. He couldn't afford to lose momentum. "We've had some challenges," Alex began, his voice firm. "Some people still don't see the value of what we're doing, and they're pushing for us to put this project on hold. But I'm here to tell you that we're not stopping. This initiative isn't just a program. It's our future. It's the future of Tech Horizon." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle in. He could see the skepticism in some of the faces before him, but there was something else too: determination. These were the people who believed in the vision, who knew that what they were doing wasn't just about coding or making profits. It was about creating something that could change lives. "We're going to push through this," Alex continued. "We're going to keep working on the pilot program. We're going to make it a success. And then, we're going to show the world what happens when technology is used for good. We won't just be a tech company. We'll be a movement." Ethan gave him an encouraging nod. Sarah's eyes sparkled with the kind of passion Alex had seen in her when she first joined the team. Even Mark, who had always been cautious and strategic, was leaning forward, clearly invested in what Alex was saying. For the first time in days, Alex felt a surge of hope. He wasn't alone. There were people who shared his vision, who understood the bigger picture. And together, they were going to make this happen, no matter what the board said. As the meeting ended, Alex gathered his things and made his way back to his office. He felt a new sense of resolve settle over him. The battle was far from over. The challenges were only just beginning. But this was the work that mattered. This was what would define his legacy. No matter how hard it got, Alex was ready to fight for it. Alex's newfound resolve was tested sooner than he expected. Just when things seemed to be moving in the right direction, the universe seemed determined to throw obstacles in his path. The pilot program, which had initially been greenlit by the board, was hitting unexpected roadblocks. The team had been working tirelessly to fine-tune the curriculum, source the necessary technology, and recruit mentors for the students who would participate. But despite their best efforts, the program's execution was slipping. One morning, Alex received a call from Sarah, his head of operations. Her voice was tight with frustration as she explained the situation. "Alex, we've got a problem. The vendor we contracted for the tech supplies, laptops, tablets, software, just backed out. They're citing logistical issues. We're supposed to be launching the pilot next month, but without these supplies, we can't move forward." Alex felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't just a minor hiccup, this was a major issue. The supplies were the backbone of the program. Without them, the entire project would be at risk, and the timing couldn't be worse. The board had given him only a few months to prove the initiative's worth before they would decide whether to invest further resources or pull the plug altogether. "Do we have any other options?" Alex asked, trying to remain calm. "I'm working on it," Sarah replied. "But it's tough. The timing is tight, and all of the suppliers I've contacted are either out of stock or unwilling to commit to the quantities we need." Alex sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just about finding a solution. It was about everything he had worked for, everything he believed in, being on the line. He could already hear the board's doubts echoing in his mind. They had been skeptical from the beginning, and this setback would only fuel their skepticism further. But as much as his mind screamed with frustration, Alex knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything he'd invested in this vision. The thought of the kids who would benefit from the program, the communities who needed this initiative, was enough to keep him moving forward. "I'll handle this," Alex said, his voice steady despite the anxiety he was feeling. "You keep working on the logistics. I'll reach out to a few contacts and see if I can get us the equipment we need. We can't afford to let this derail us." As the day wore on, Alex did what he did best. He networked, he called in favors, and he pushed forward, relentlessly searching for a solution. He reached out to his contacts in the tech world, pulling every string he could. At one point, he even called in a favor from an old friend who worked at a major retailer, hoping that they could expedite the order for the necessary tech supplies. By the end of the week, Alex had secured a deal with a different supplier, a smaller, local company that was willing to work with him on a tight timeline. It wasn't the ideal solution, but it was enough to move forward with the pilot program. But as he hung up the phone after finalizing the deal, a wave of exhaustion washed over him. He had been running on adrenaline for weeks, juggling meetings, presentations, and now crisis management. His mind was tired, and his body was beginning to show signs of wear. He hadn't been sleeping well, hadn't taken a day off in weeks, and now this setback had left him mentally drained. That evening, as Alex walked into his apartment, he was greeted by the quiet. He had become so accustomed to the hustle and urgency of his work that the silence felt strange. The apartment was neat, but it felt empty. He hadn't spent much time there lately, choosing instead to stay late at the office or take calls from the road. As he sat on the couch, staring at the blank walls around him, a feeling of loneliness crept in. He had a team who believed in the project. He had Rachel, Ethan, and Sarah. He had people who were working hard to bring his vision to life. But in that moment, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was alone in this battle. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. His phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Rachel. "How's it going? I know you're under a lot of pressure, but I have no doubt you'll pull this off. Remember, you're not doing this alone. Keep going. I believe in you." Alex read the message, and a lump formed in his throat. He hadn't realized how much he needed those words. In that moment, it dawned on him that the battle wasn't just external. It was internal, too. He was pushing himself to the limit, convinced that he had to be everything to everyone. He had to prove to the board, to the team, to himself, that this idea was worth fighting for. But in doing so, he had neglected something important, his own well-being. He set the phone down and leaned back against the couch, closing his eyes. He had been so focused on pushing forward that he hadn't taken a step back to reassess how much he was sacrificing. The pressure he was putting on himself was taking a toll, and he needed to find a way to manage it before it consumed him entirely. The next morning, Alex made a decision. He needed to recharge, even if only for a day. He couldn't afford to burn out. He sent a message to Ethan, Sarah, and Rachel, letting them know that he was going to take the weekend off. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That Saturday, Alex went for a long hike in the mountains, something he hadn't done in months. As he walked, he allowed himself to breathe, to take in the beauty of the landscape, and to feel the weight on his shoulders lessen. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was truly present. By the time Sunday evening came, Alex felt recharged. He wasn't entirely free of the challenges that lay ahead, but he had regained his perspective. The journey wasn't going to be easy. There would be more setbacks, more obstacles, more moments of doubt. But he was ready to face them. He returned to the office Monday morning, refreshed and with renewed purpose. The challenges hadn't disappeared, but he knew that he didn't have to face them alone. He had a team that believed in him, and most importantly, he had a vision that was worth fighting for. The road ahead would be difficult, but Alex was no longer worried about the bumps along the way. Because in the end, it was the journey that mattered. By the following month, Alex's world had turned into a whirlwind of constant phone calls, strategy meetings, and last-minute decisions. The pressure to succeed was immense, and with the pilot program set to launch in just a few short weeks, he felt the weight of every expectation resting squarely on his shoulders. The vendor issues had been resolved, but now another problem had emerged, one that Alex had been bracing for but hadn't fully anticipated. David, one of the board members who had been the most vocal against the initiative, had started to rally other board members to his side. Despite the pilot's progress, the skepticism surrounding the initiative hadn't diminished. If anything, it had deepened. The board was now discussing whether to scale back the program or, worse, cancel it altogether if the results weren't immediate enough. It was a gut punch for Alex. He had been working tirelessly, day and night, to make the initiative a success, but the pressure was mounting. Every day, it felt like more and more people were questioning the viability of his vision, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in on him. It was on one of these particularly frustrating afternoons when Alex received an unexpected call. The caller ID flashed with the name Lana Carter, a name Alex hadn't seen in years. Lana had been a former colleague from his early days at Tech Horizon. She was brilliant, resourceful, and someone Alex had always admired for her forward-thinking approach to business. She had left the company a couple of years ago to start her own venture, but they'd remained in touch occasionally. Alex picked up the phone, trying to mask the exhaustion in his voice. "Lana, long time no talk. What's going on?" "Alex, it's good to hear from you," Lana replied, her tone warm but with a hint of urgency. "Listen, I've been following your project, your initiative, right? And I think I may be able to help." Alex sat up straighter. "What do you mean? Help how?" "I've been hearing things about the board's stance on the initiative," she said, her voice lowering slightly. "I know you've been facing some resistance. I also know a few people on the board who might be willing to listen to a different perspective. I think there's a way to make them see what you're doing, to show them that this isn't just some charity project, it's a business model that can actually help Tech Horizon grow." Alex felt a flicker of hope. Lana had always been able to think outside the box, and if anyone could help him convince the board, it was her. "I'd be open to anything," Alex admitted. "I'm running out of time, and if this program doesn't work out, we might lose all of this." "I know, but I've been in your shoes before," Lana said. "I know how to get people to see things differently. What I'm proposing is that we turn the conversation around. We need to frame the initiative not just as a corporate responsibility program, but as a smart business move, one that aligns with the company's long-term goals. We can show them how this will help build a brand identity, attract new talent, and even expand into new markets. I have a few strategies in mind that could work." Alex paused, considering her words. What she was saying made sense. If he could reframe the initiative as a way to drive business growth, he might be able to change the board's perception. "I'm listening," Alex said, his voice tinged with cautious optimism. Lana continued, "First, we need to put together a comprehensive presentation that outlines the measurable benefits to the company. Not just abstract ideas, numbers, data, and projections that show how this program could boost Tech Horizon's reputation, customer loyalty, and even profitability. Second, We need to align this initiative with some of the company's core values and existing goals: sustainability, innovation, and social impact. That will help shift the conversation from "this is a nice to have" to "this is a must-have." Alex's mind started to race. This wasn't just about fighting to keep the initiative alive. It was about repositioning it in a way that made it undeniable. "I like where you're going with this," he said, his voice gaining strength. "Can we put something together by the next board meeting? I think we need to show them that this isn't just a social project, it's a game changer." "I'll help you with that," Lana said. "Let's get to work." Over the next several days, Alex and Lana worked tirelessly to craft a new approach. They dug into the numbers, identifying key areas where Tech Horizon could benefit from the initiative. They highlighted the growing demand for socially responsible companies and the increasingly competitive job market, showing how the program would position Tech Horizon as a leader in both innovation and social impact. They also worked with Sarah and Ethan to gather data from similar programs and draw comparisons. They used case studies from other companies that had successfully integrated corporate responsibility with their business strategies, proving that social good could go hand in hand with profitability. The more Alex and Lana worked together, the more energized Alex felt. Lana's expertise and fresh perspective were exactly what he needed to push this initiative forward. But as the days passed and the board meeting drew nearer, the pressure returned. Every conversation with board members felt like a negotiation, a dance to get them to see the benefits of something they didn't fully understand. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Alex walked into the conference room, his heart pounding. He had spent hours preparing, rehearsing, and tweaking every detail of the presentation. But despite his preparation, he couldn't shake the feeling that this would be his last chance to convince the board. He took a deep breath as he sat down, his team by his side. Lana, sitting at the back, gave him a reassuring nod. This was it. The meeting started, and after a few preliminary discussions, it was time for Alex to present. He stood up and faced the board, his hands steady, his mind clear. "Thank you for taking the time to hear us today," Alex began. "We've spent the last few weeks refining our approach and gathering the data to demonstrate the value of this initiative, not just for the community, but for Tech Horizon as a company. What we're proposing isn't just a philanthropic endeavor. It's a smart, strategic move that will help us grow, innovate, and stay ahead of the competition." As he presented, Alex felt the shift in the room. He could see the board members listening more attentively, nodding, taking notes. When the presentation was over, there was a pause. Then David, the most vocal critic, spoke. "I have to admit, Alex, this is more compelling than I expected. You've shown us that there's real business potential here. If we can align this initiative with our goals, it could actually give us a competitive advantage." Alex's heart soared. This was the breakthrough he had been waiting for. David turned to the rest of the board. "I'm willing to give this a chance. If the numbers align, I think we can support moving forward with full-scale implementation." Alex exhaled, barely able to contain his relief. He had done it. The vote passed. The initiative would move forward. As the meeting ended, Alex's team gathered around him, and for the first time in weeks, Alex felt like he could breathe again. He had won a battle, but he knew the war was far from over. There would be more obstacles ahead, more challenges to face. But for now, he had proven that the initiative wasn't just a dream. It was a viable, powerful force for change. And with that, a new chapter had begun. With the board's approval in hand, Alex felt a surge of optimism he hadn't felt in months. The initiative was moving forward, and the first steps of the pilot program were already being mapped out. But despite the victory, a part of him remained on edge. The challenges ahead were still very real: financial constraints, tight timelines, and the skepticism of the broader corporate world. But there was one thing Alex now knew for sure: he couldn't do it alone. The very next morning after the board meeting, Alex took a moment to reflect. The months of hard work, sleepless nights, and battles with the board had brought him to this pivotal moment. But now, as the weight of responsibility shifted slightly off his shoulders, he couldn't help but realize something crucial. He had been so focused on getting through each hurdle, pushing forward, and proving himself, that he had neglected to acknowledge the most important thing of all: his people. His team had been incredible throughout this journey, and he realized that their unwavering support had been the driving force behind his success. Ethan, Sarah, and even Rachel had all been there when the going got tough, offering their insight and their support. But there was one person whose quiet strength Alex had failed to recognize as much as he should have: Lana. In the weeks since Lana had rejoined the project, her influence had been palpable. While she was no longer a part of Tech Horizon in the traditional sense, her experience, drive, and creative thinking had helped shift the project into a new gear. And Alex couldn't shake the feeling that, without her, he might not have won over the board. Lana had always been a quiet force, a behind-the-scenes strategist. When she left Tech Horizon years ago, it was under circumstances that Alex had never fully understood. She had made a name for herself in the tech world, but now she had returned, not only to help with this initiative, but to help Alex take it to places he had never imagined. As Alex sat in his office, reviewing the feedback from the board meeting, he decided it was time to give Lana the credit she deserved. He picked up his phone and texted her. "Lana, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. The presentation was a game changer, and I couldn't have done it without you. I hope you know how much your support means to me. We need to talk." A moment later, Lana responded, "We absolutely do. You've done more than just thank me. You've trusted me. That's what matters. Let's catch up soon." Alex smiled at her words. As much as the initiative meant to him, it was clear that the relationships he had built along the way were just as important. It wasn't just about technology or profit. It was about the people he had surrounded himself with and the trust they shared. A few days later, Alex and Lana met over coffee at a quiet cafe near his office. The air was crisp, and the low hum of the cafe felt almost therapeutic as they sat down at a corner table, away from the noise of the world. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said during that board meeting," Alex began, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly, "about the initiative being more than just a corporate responsibility program. You were right. This isn't just about doing good. It's about aligning everything we do with the larger business goals. We can make Tech Horizon more than just a tech company. We can make it a movement." Lana nodded thoughtfully. "Exactly. And you've got the right mindset. You're thinking about long-term impact, not just short-term gains. That's where the real power lies." Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's just that sometimes it feels like the world is telling me to play it safe. But I can't. I can't stand by and let this chance slip away just because it's easier. I know what this can be." Lana leaned forward, her eyes locking with his. "And that's why you're the right person to lead it. You're not afraid to push boundaries, to take risks. And that's why I'm here, to help make sure those risks pay off." Alex couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Lana had always been the one to push him to think beyond the obvious, to challenge the conventional. And now, as they sat across from each other, he realized that having her by his side was exactly what he needed to succeed. "You've been a game changer, Lana," Alex said earnestly. "I don't know if I could have done this without you." Lana smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Well, I'll take credit for the win, but you did all the hard work. You're the one who built this vision from the ground up. All I did was help you make sure the foundation was solid." The two sat in companionable silence for a few moments, both savoring the victory and the promise of what was yet to come. Alex couldn't help but think that this was just the beginning. The future was full of uncertainty, but now, at least, he had a clear path ahead. But as they wrapped up their conversation and got ready to head back to their respective worlds, Lana left Alex with a final piece of advice. "Alex," she said, her voice serious but kind, "the board isn't the only challenge you'll face. The real test is making sure that your vision stays intact as this project grows. You're going to have people coming from all directions, trying to tell you what's best. But remember this, stay true to what you believe in. The world doesn't need more companies that just want to make money. It needs companies that want to change the world. Don't ever lose sight of that." Her words echoed in Alex's mind as they parted ways, and he felt an overwhelming sense of clarity wash over him. He had always known that this initiative wasn't just about business. It was about creating a new legacy. And now, more than ever, he was ready to fight for that vision. As the weeks passed, the momentum continued to build. The pilot program was on track, and Alex could feel the energy in the office shift. More and more employees were beginning to see the potential of the initiative, and there was a renewed sense of excitement in the air. The first group of students had been selected, mentors were ready, and the tech supplies were finally in place. But just as Alex thought things were beginning to settle, the next challenge loomed on the horizon. The success of the initiative now depended not just on the board's approval, but on how the public and the people outside of Tech Horizon would react. And with that, the next chapter of Alex's journey would begin. The launch of the pilot program was officially on the calendar. The first group of students would begin their mentoring sessions in just a few weeks, and the momentum was building rapidly. Alex felt a renewed sense of excitement about the future. The program was starting to take shape, and there was a palpable energy within the company. But just as the internal momentum was picking up, a new challenge emerged, one that Alex hadn't fully prepared for. As the date for the pilot approached, the external pressures began to mount. Tech Horizon's media team was preparing to release a press statement about the new initiative. The idea was to announce the company's new commitment to social responsibility and its efforts to support underprivileged communities through mentorship and educational opportunities. But as the date neared, Alex started to feel the weight of the external spotlight. The company was no longer just operating in a vacuum. Soon, it would be under the scrutiny of the media, the public, and potential investors. What if we're not ready? Alex had confided to Sarah one afternoon as they sat in his office, reviewing the final details of the press release. "We are ready," Sarah replied confidently. "We've got the program set up, the partnerships are in place, and everything's lined up for the first group of students. The public will see what we're doing and realize we're serious." "But will they?" Alex pressed, his voice tinged with doubt. "We've talked a lot about the potential impact, but what if people think this is just a publicity stunt? What if they think we're just jumping on the social good bandwagon?" Sarah paused for a moment, looking at him thoughtfully. "I get it, Alex. But here's the thing. You've built this program from the ground up. You've poured your heart and soul into it. If the world sees it for what it truly is, they'll get behind it. People want to support something authentic, and that's exactly what you've created." Alex nodded slowly. "I just hope we can live up to the hype. I know this program is important, but we need it to succeed in the real world, not just in the press release." As if on cue, a notification popped up on Alex's phone. It was a message from Rachel. "Hey, I know you've been stressed with the media attention, but we've got a big opportunity coming up. There's an interview with Business Insider next week. Can we count on you to talk about the initiative?" Alex read the message with a deep breath. The interview would be another chance to present the initiative to the world, but it also meant more exposure and more scrutiny. He had already experienced firsthand how difficult it could be to navigate the pressure of external expectations. This would be a different kind of test. "I'll do it," Alex replied, "but I'm not sure I'm ready for the spotlight." Rachel's response was almost immediate. "You've got this. Just stay true to the mission, and everything will fall into place. We believe in you." Alex let out a breath, trying to steady himself. He'd always been good at handling pressure, but this felt different. The stakes were higher now. His vision for the initiative had always been about making a difference, but it was also about proving that businesses could do well by doing good. If he couldn't convey that vision clearly, everything he had worked for might not reach the audience it needed. The day of the interview arrived quickly. Alex sat in the conference room, his mind racing as he prepared for the conversation. He had reviewed his talking points, gone over the program's objectives, and even practiced a few responses with Sarah and Ethan. But as he sat there waiting for the journalist to arrive, the weight of the situation began to settle on his shoulders. Finally, the door opened, and a reporter from Business Insider walked in, shaking Alex's hand. She introduced herself as Maya Williams, a senior reporter covering the tech industry and social responsibility initiatives. "Alex, it's great to meet you," Maya said, smiling warmly as she sat down across from him. "I've been following Tech Horizon's growth, and I have to say, I'm really intrigued by this new initiative. It's certainly a departure from the usual corporate responsibility programs we see in the industry." "Thank you, Maya," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm excited to be here to talk about it." "Let's start with the basics," Maya said, flipping open her notebook. "Can you explain what exactly this initiative is? and why it's different from the other corporate responsibility programs that are often launched in the tech world? Alex took a deep breath and launched into his prepared talking points. He spoke with passion about the need for mentorship and education in underserved communities, about how Tech Horizon was committed to creating real, measurable change rather than just making a token donation. He explained how the program would pair students with mentors in the tech industry and provide them with hands-on experience, something that would give them the tools they needed to succeed in the workforce. But Maya wasn't easily swayed. As she listened, her eyes narrowed slightly, and Alex could tell she was scrutinizing his every word. "That sounds impressive, Alex," she said, pausing to jot down a few notes. "But let me ask you this. How do you respond to critics who might say that this is just a PR stunt? After all, Tech Horizon is a huge company. Is this initiative truly about making a difference, or is it just a way to improve your public image?" Alex felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. He had anticipated this question, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure how to answer it without sounding defensive. "Well, Maya, I can understand why some people might feel that way," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But the truth is, this isn't just about improving our public image. If it were, I wouldn't have spent the last several months working directly with communities, meeting with mentors, and trying to build a program that can truly make an impact. This initiative is about creating real, lasting change, not just for Tech Horizon, but for the industry as a whole. It's about showing that companies can do well by doing good." Maya studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to Alex's relief, she nodded slowly. "I hear you, Alex. And I think that's something that resonates with a lot of people today. But can you give me an example of how this program will actually make a tangible difference in the lives of these students?" Alex smiled, feeling the tension ease slightly. This was his moment to show the true heart of the initiative. "One of the things we're most excited about is the mentorship component," Alex began. "We've partnered with some of the brightest minds in tech to provide mentorship to these students. They won't just be getting advice. They'll be gaining hands-on experience in real-world projects. We're not just teaching them theory. We're giving them the tools, the skills, and the network they need to thrive in an increasingly competitive job market. That's how we know we're making a difference." Maya's eyes softened, and she nodded again, clearly impressed by Alex's response. "Thank you, Alex. I think that's exactly the kind of impact people want to hear about. I'll be sure to highlight that in the piece." By the time the interview wrapped up, Alex felt a sense of relief wash over him. The toughest part was over, but he knew that the true test would be how the public responded. If the initiative resonated with people the way it had with Maya, it could be a turning point for Tech Horizon. But as he left the office that afternoon, he realized something important. This wasn't just about winning over the media. It was about staying true to his vision, one that wasn't driven by the desire for publicity or recognition, but by the belief that a company could change the world while doing good. And with that, Alex was ready to face whatever came next. The aftermath of Alex's interview with Business Insider was more overwhelming than he had anticipated. The article went live just 2 days after the conversation, and the response was swift and intense. Social media erupted with discussions, debates, and praise. There were people who questioned the authenticity of the initiative, as expected, but there were also a great number of supporters who resonated with the message. Tech Horizon's press release had done its job, and the story quickly became one of the most talked about topics in the tech industry that week. Alex sat at his desk, staring at the screen as he scrolled through countless comments, shares, and articles that followed. Some of the reactions were predictable. Critics pointed out the company's history, with some claiming Tech Horizon was merely trying to cleanse its image by jumping on the social good bandwagon. Others questioned whether the initiative was a genuine attempt to address real problems, or just a way to gain marketability and brand loyalty. But there were also voices of support. A number of tech influencers praised the program for its depth and scope, calling it a much-needed step in a space dominated by corporate greed. Industry leaders applauded the company's bold move to foster education and mentorship, arguing that it was a long-overdue initiative in a sector that often left the most marginalized behind. And then, there was the surprise. Several former Tech Horizon employees, including some who had been in senior positions, came forward with their own testimonials. They spoke about the vision Alex had when he first joined the company, how, even back then, He had always believed in the power of technology to uplift communities and create positive change. That was the moment it clicked for Alex. While he had been nervous about how the initiative would be perceived, he hadn't realized the power of the broader narrative. It wasn't just about this one project. It was about Tech Horizon's entire ethos. The article had shed light on the bigger picture. The company was capable of more than just building tech for profit. It was capable of creating lasting, meaningful change. The following weeks were a blur. The press buzz didn't die down. It only grew stronger. Tech Horizon was receiving more media requests, more interviews, and more inquiries from other companies wanting to partner with them. But with this surge of attention came new challenges. Alex found himself at the center of a media storm that required his constant attention. He was inundated with phone calls, emails, and requests for comments on every possible angle of the initiative. The pressure was relentless, and for a moment, he found himself questioning whether this was all sustainable. One late evening, after another long day of back-to-back interviews, Alex sat in his office, staring out the window at the city lights. The exhaustion weighed heavily on him, but there was something else gnawing at him, something he couldn't quite shake. His phone buzzed on the desk, breaking his train of thought. It was a message from Rachel. "Hey, got a minute?" Alex smiled slightly at the simple text. He had been working so hard lately that he hadn't had the chance to catch up with her properly in weeks. He quickly typed back, "Always. Meet you in the break room?" A few minutes later, Rachel walked in, a warm cup of coffee in her hand. She smiled at him, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. "You look like you've been living here," she said, sitting down across from him. Alex chuckled tiredly. "Feels like it. I'm just trying to keep up with everything that's going on. The initiative is growing faster than I expected, and it's amazing. But sometimes I wonder if I can keep this up." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "I get it. The spotlight is on you now, and with that comes a lot of pressure. But here's the thing, Alex. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the bigger picture. And whether you realize it or not, you've already started something that will outlast all of us. You're building something real." Alex ran a hand through his hair. "I hope so. But sometimes I feel like it's all too much. The expectations, the media frenzy, it's overwhelming. I don't want to lose sight of what we're doing here just because it's getting so big." Rachel leaned forward, her gaze steady. "You won't lose sight of it. You've been the driving force behind this initiative from the very beginning. What you're doing isn't just about the attention. It's about what it represents. Don't forget that. Don't let the noise drown out the mission." Alex's chest tightened with emotion as Rachel's words hit home. She was right, of course. It was easy to get lost in the whirlwind of publicity, but the heart of the initiative had always been about creating real change. He had to remind himself of that, especially now when everything seemed so chaotic. "I don't want to become the kind of leader who's only concerned with public perception," Alex said quietly. "I want this to be about the people we're helping, not the headlines." Rachel smiled softly. "You're already there, Alex. You're doing it. And the fact that you're even worried about staying true to the mission shows you're not losing sight of it. That's what makes you different." The reassurance in her words gave him a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in weeks. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the weight on his shoulders lighten just a little. "I needed to hear that," Alex said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thanks, Rachel. You always know how to put things into perspective." She grinned. "That's what friends are for. Now go get some rest. You've earned it." As the weeks went by, Tech Horizon's initiative continued to gain momentum. The first group of students began their mentorship sessions, and reports from the field came in showing tremendous progress. The students were thriving, with many reporting new levels of confidence and excitement about their future prospects. The mentors, too, seemed to find fulfillment in giving back in such a direct, hands-on way. But with the success of the initiative came growing pains. As the program scaled, Alex knew that the internal structure of the project would need to adapt quickly. It wasn't just about recruiting more mentors or more students. It was about ensuring the quality of the experience for everyone involved. Behind the scenes, Alex and his team were working tirelessly to refine the logistics. They had to ensure that the program would remain sustainable, that they could manage the growing demand without losing sight of their mission. And while the success stories continued to pour in, Alex knew that the real test would come when the media attention inevitably died down. Would the program continue to thrive once the cameras were gone? It was a question he couldn't answer just yet. But one thing was for sure. Alex was ready to keep fighting for this mission, no matter what. The world had noticed Tech Horizon, and now it was up to him and his team to prove that the initiative was more than just a fleeting moment. It was the beginning of a lasting change. And so, as Alex prepared for the next phase of the project, he knew that the real challenge wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet, everyday work of making the world a better place, one mentorship at a time. Months had passed since the media frenzy surrounding the launch of Tech Horizon's mentorship program. The initial excitement had settled into a steady rhythm, but the challenges that came with running a large-scale initiative were far from over. Alex found himself more and more immersed in the day-to-day operations, overseeing the program's expansion, handling logistics, and ensuring the quality of the mentorship experience remained high. The spotlight may have dimmed, but the work, his work, had only just begun. One afternoon, as Alex reviewed a new round of feedback from mentors and students, Sarah knocked on his office door. Her face was filled with urgency, something he wasn't used to seeing in her usually calm demeanor. "Hey, Alex, we need to talk," she said, stepping in without waiting for his invitation. Alex sat up straight, sensing something significant was coming. "What's going on?" "There's been some talk in the industry about scaling the program globally. A few venture capital firms are interested in funding it, and some of our partner organizations want to expand it beyond the U.S., she explained, her voice calm but serious. "It's a huge opportunity, but it also means a lot more responsibility." Alex's mind raced. Global? That's a lot. We're already stretched thin just managing the local chapters. How do we even begin to think about expanding internationally? Sarah sat down across from him, crossing her arms as she looked at him thoughtfully. "It's going to be a big leap, no doubt. But it's also what we've been talking about from the beginning, building something that can make a real, global impact. This is the chance to turn that vision into a reality." Alex leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The idea of going global was exhilarating, but also terrifying. It meant doubling down on everything they'd built, and possibly putting his team under more pressure than they could handle. "But what about our current model?" Alex asked. "What if it doesn't translate well to other countries? There are so many variables. What if we fail?" Sarah smiled softly, understanding his hesitation. "Alex, no one ever said it would be easy. But we've already built something incredible here. The foundation is strong. Now it's about growing that foundation, expanding it, and making sure we don't lose sight of what matters. We don't have to do everything at once. We can take it slow, scale strategically." Alex nodded slowly, still processing everything Sarah had said. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential reward. This was the moment when his leadership would truly be tested. The initiative wasn't just about making a difference anymore. It was about transforming Tech Horizon into a global force for good. "Let's talk to the team," Alex finally said. "We need to have a conversation about this before we make any decisions." That evening, Alex called an emergency meeting with his core team. Sarah, Rachel, Ethan, and a few key members of the operational team gathered in the conference room. The atmosphere was tense as Alex laid out the potential opportunity. The proposal was clear. Several firms were ready to back them financially, and there was a demand to expand the program to other countries. But with that expansion came the challenge of maintaining the integrity of the program's mission. "So, here's the bottom line," Alex said, looking around the room. "We're at a crossroads. The program has been successful here, but now we have a chance to make it global. We're going to need more resources, more manpower, and more commitment from all of us. This will be a huge undertaking, but if we can pull it off, it'll change lives on a global scale." The room was silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of the decision. "Is it worth it?" Rachel asked, breaking the silence. "If we expand too quickly, we risk losing what makes this program so special. But if we move slowly, we might miss the opportunity altogether." Ethan, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. "I think we can do it, but it's going to take all of us. We'll need to ensure that the mentors and students we bring in are aligned with the program's core values. We can't compromise on quality, no matter where we expand." I agree, Sarah added. It's not about growing for the sake of growth. It's about making sure we're truly helping the people who need it. So, if we move forward, we need to keep the same level of commitment to the program's mission that we've had from the beginning. Alex looked around the room at his team. He knew they were all ready for the challenge, but he also understood that this decision would define their future. We're not going to jump into this blindly, Alex said after a long pause. We'll take it step by step, testing the waters in a few countries first, and making sure we can handle the complexity before we go any further. But we are going to move forward. The team exchanged looks of agreement, and a sense of resolve settled over the room. Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was the next chapter, and he was ready to face it head-on. Over the next few months, Alex and his team worked tirelessly to prepare for the global launch. They carefully selected the first countries to expand to, focusing on areas where the need for mentorship and educational opportunities was greatest. They established new partnerships with local organizations, trained mentors, and adjusted the program to fit the unique needs of each region. Despite the complexities, Alex felt a deep sense of pride as he watched the program begin to take root in other parts of the world. The expansion wasn't without its challenges. Different countries had varying levels of access to technology, different cultural expectations, and different ways of doing business. There were setbacks, including delays in getting the right resources to some of the international chapters. But with every obstacle, Alex's team rallied together, determined to adapt and overcome. By the time the program reached its first international milestones, Alex was no longer the same person who had started this journey. He had learned the value of resilience, the importance of staying true to one's mission, and the power of working as a team. The global expansion was no longer just a dream. It was a reality. And in the end, as Alex stood before a group of mentors and students in a new country, witnessing the transformation firsthand, he realized something. This wasn't about accolades, media attention, or even scaling the business. It was about the lives they were changing, one student at a time. The program had come full circle. What had started as a small idea had blossomed into something much bigger. And as Alex watched a young student shake hands with their mentor, he knew that the legacy of Tech Horizon's mentorship program would live on, shaping the future in ways that could never be fully predicted. But one thing was certain. They had only just begun. It's not about the success we achieve, Alex thought as he looked out over the room, but the difference we make. And with that thought, he knew that his work was far from over.